Chapter 11:10. The underworld was established. In the Fengdu necropolis, some of the creatures fled, while others remained where they were. At the same time, when goddess Pingxian established the underworld, the entire Great Thousand World was shaken. After the death of an ordinary cultivator, the remnant true spirit in the world would be guided toward the underworld by an unseen force. At the same time, some powerful cultivators who are waiting for their divine souls to be reborn also sensed something and headed to the underworld. Since the beginning of the era, countless living beings had died. Many weak living beings returned to heaven and earth the moment they died, leaving no trace behind. However, some living beings with cultivation did not completely return to heaven and earth after death. There is still a wisp of true spirit lingering in heaven and earth. After a long time, this wisp of true spirit would disappear into nothingness. But even so, the number of cultivators who had died in the past few decades was not small. The remaining true spirits, which had not been completely annihilated, headed straight for the fallen immortal realm after being summoned. Originally, true spirits were shapeless and intangible. However, with the gathering of countless true spirits, the entire fallen celestial realm was engulfed in darkness, like a dark cloud. In the eyes of the powerful cultivators, they could clearly see those so-called dark clouds were actually illusory living beings. There were people. There were also beasts. There were also cultivators from other races. Those living beings all looked confused. They instinctively headed toward the crack in the fallen immortal domain and entered the underworld.
Soon,
countless true spirits were wandering in the sky above the Fengdu necropolis. True spirits were of the extreme Yin attribute. 1 or 2 true spirits were fine. The extreme Yin aura they carried was very weak and would not cause much of an impact. However, when the number of true spirits increased to millions, tens of millions, or even hundreds of millions, the extreme Yin aura they carried would be terrifying. All the cultivators who stayed in the Fengdu necropolis were affected by the extreme Yin aura. Their blood and qi almost stagnated. It's so cold. What should we do? If this continues, we will be frozen to death. Let's wait and see what's going on. Those cultivators endured the erosion of the extreme Yin aura, but they did not want to leave. The scene in front of them, it explained the situation even more. If he wasn't an extremely terrifying expert, how could he possibly cause such a huge commotion? If he could persevere, who knows, he might be able to gain the recognition of an expert. Northern continent. Ancient Buddha clan's territory. After Buddha Sakya arrived, he immediately established the Buddhist gate. Hell. Looking at the huge commotion in the sky and the gathering of true spirits like dark clouds, Buddha Sakya's eyes flashed with envy. He knew it wasn't because goddess Pingxian had used some kind of divine ability that caused such a huge commotion, but because the emergence of hell was one of the most important parts of heaven and earth. Therefore, as soon as he established the underworld, all types of phenomena would appear between heaven and earth, and the purpose of this was to inform all living beings of the existence of the underworld. It could be said that Goddess Pingxian had the help of the heavens and earth. After this incident, all of the living beings in the world would know about the existence of hell. Until then, hell's reputation would definitely soar. Compared to himself, Buddha Sakya couldn't help but smile bitterly. He had long known that the place Qin Shu Jian had given him would not be a good place. But when he really arrived at the ancient Buddha clan's territory, Buddha Sakya realized the ancient Buddha clan's territory was more than just sparsely populated. In fact, it wasn't a problem to use the word barren. There were no signs of life, and the spirit energy was very ordinary. There wasn't a single spirit vein below. Putting himself in such a place, he even suspected that the Qin emperor was somewhat dissatisfied with the Buddhist gate, or with him. However, thinking about it was just thinking. Buddha Sakya had no other choice. In the end, everything was about the size of one's fist. If Qin Shujian's fist was hard, he wouldn't have the right to resist. Unless it was really a situation where he had no other choice. Or else, He didn't intend to fall out with Qin Shu Jian. There was no other way. Since there was nothing in the ancient Buddha clan's territory, he could only fight for himself. Then, with a thought from Buddha Sakya, all the spirit energy in the ancient Buddha clan's territory was extracted by him. In an instant, a large amount of spirit energy forcefully condensed together. At the same time, in other places of the ancient Buddha clan, there was a temporary shortage of spirit energy. Then, more spirit energy between heaven and earth surged toward the ancient Buddha clan's territory. Spirit energy filled. Buddha Sakya continued to extract. If there were no restrictions with the identity of Tao fruit, if he wanted to extract spirit energy, with just a thought, the spirit energy within hundreds of millions of miles could condense in his palm. But there were restrictions. He couldn't extract spirit energy without restraint. He could only extract the spirit energy of heaven and earth within the ancient Buddha clan's territory. After going back and forth many times, in front of Buddha Sakya, there was an additional pool of spirit energy condensed into water. Then he poured the pool of spirit energy into the ground of the ancient Buddha clan. When all the spirit energy pool water seeped into the ground, only weak spirit energy could be seen emitting from inside. It's just the embryonic form of the spirit vein. It's not enough. Buddha Sakya felt the spirit energy in the spirit vein and couldn't help shaking his head slightly. The embryonic form of the spirit vein. The spirit chi that it emitted was simply too weak. As the territory of the Buddhist gate, such weak spirit energy was not worthy of the identity of the Buddhist gate at all. In the end, Buddha Sakya stretched out his right index finger. Flesh and blood separated, and a drop of golden blood containing endless Taoist rhymes separated from his index finger and fell to the ground below. Boom! The blood fell. The ancient Buddha clan's territory shook. At that moment, the embryonic form of the spirit vein was like a carp transforming into a dragon, violently undulating in the depths of the earth. Like a giant beast, it began to swallow a huge amount of spirit energy of heaven and earth. Rumble. In the sky above the ancient Buddha clan's territory, a vast spirit energy vortex condensed and formed. The spirit vein swallowed the spirit energy of heaven and earth, constantly strengthening itself, growing and transforming step by step. In just a few breaths' time, the spirit energy of the ancient Buddha clan's territory suddenly rose by several levels. Seeing this, Buddha Sakya nodded with satisfaction. Although it consumed a drop of his blood, at least it reached his psychological expectations. The blood of Tao fruit. Usually, they represented endless and wondrous uses. Then he waved his hand. A mountain protruded. The mountain, which was only 1,000 feet in size, instantly rose to a height of 10,000 feet, reaching the point where it towered into the clouds. Buddha Sakya took a step forward and directly appeared at the mountain peak. He waved his right hand again. A building appeared there out of thin air. On the plaque of the building, a few big words were written. Great Lane Temple. Chapter 11:11. The underworld has appeared. In the heavenly court, Qin Shu Jian looked at the true spirits drifting between heaven and earth, converging toward the fallen immortal realm. He did not stop them. When the underworld appeared, he had already expected it. The situation in front of him. It was not much different from what he had expected. The real world has a complete reincarnation cycle. In the illusory world, the power of living beings returns to heaven and earth after death. Unless one reaches a certain level, there is no such thing as past and present life. Life was like an extinguished lamp. Everything was like a fleeting cloud. The illusory world had truly achieved this step. The dead were completely dead. There was no such thing as past and present life, and there would be no traces left. If reincarnation appeared in heaven and earth, then the living would have a home after death. Since then, there were traces of past and present life. This was a truly complete world. Whether reincarnation or not is not important to me. What I pursue is eternal life. Since the illusory world will be destroyed by real power every time a certain period of time, then I will break the illusory boundary. If I want eternal life, no one can stop me. Qin Shujian's eyes lit up. Eternal life. Regardless of whether it was the third era or the current era, they were all things that he pursued. The former Qin Shujian. He thought that after attaining Dao fruit, he would truly have eternal life. After attaining Dao fruit, he realized that the entire world was illusory. Eternal life. That was just a joke. If it were anyone else, after knowing this truth, they might have suffered a great blow. But Qin Shujian did not. For him, if the illusory world could not lead to eternal life, then he would ascend to the real level. If the real level still could not lead to eternal life, then he would continue to move forward. He believed, one day, he would truly reach the node of eternal life. This was faith. It was also a goal. The underworld was established. Buddhism appeared. Several powerhouses hidden in the player's world had all returned. At the same time, the 4 players' worlds were also experiencing the recovery of spirit chi, and all the players' strength had increased a lot. With the awakening of the heavenly axiom of the player's world, the entire boundless world fell into many strange phenomena. First, there were auspicious clouds in the sky. More meteorites fell to the ground. Purple chi spread out for 1,000,000 miles, covering the sky and the sun. There was also a dark red lightning that emitted a destructive aura. When the creatures of the myriad races saw the strange phenomenon, the shock in their hearts was self-evident. Heavenly Court. In the Heavenly Palace, immortals and deities gathered. It had been a few years since the last Imperial Court Assembly. Qin Shujian sat on the throne. An invisible aura emanated from his body, making people not dare to look him in the eye. Below them, the martial emperors of the 5 directions, the 4 divine battles, and the others were all present. At this moment, Emperor Zhao was the first to step forward. He cupped his hands and said, "Emperor of Heaven, there have been many anomalies in the Eastern continent over the past few months, but I can't deduce anything. Your Majesty, are the anomalies in the Eastern continent a blessing or a curse?" While he was speaking, the other martial emperors and immortals voiced their opinions too. Emperor of Heaven, West Continent. Emperor of Heaven, Northern Continent. Emperor of Heaven, Southern Continent. The news they reported was exactly the same. It couldn't be helped. The anomalies had lasted for too long this time. Moreover, the anomalies that appeared were different every moment. Some represented auspicious signs. Some represented destruction. The martial emperors of the various races were also a little anxious because of this. Even if a great calamity really appeared, at least they would know what it was and be prepared. If there was nothing, that would be the real unsettling. After they finished speaking one by one, Qin Shujian slowly spoke. "I once said that there were many epochs before the world. Every time an old epoch was destroyed, a new one would be born. Every time an epoch was destroyed, all living beings below the Dao fruit level would die with the epoch. Even some Dao fruit level powerhouses couldn't resist the great calamity of an epoch and eventually died with the epoch. The reason why an epoch fell is because of the word truth." As soon as he finished the sentence, the martial emperor of Beast was confused. What does Emperor of Heaven mean by truth? Are the anomalies of the heavens and earth implying that this epoch is about to be destroyed? Hearing this, the rest of the immortals were startled. According to Qin Shujian's words, every living being below the Dao fruit level would die when an epoch was destroyed. If that was really the case, if the epoch was about to be destroyed, didn't that mean they were going to die too? Qin Shujian shook his head. "You're right, but you're also wrong. Emperor of Heaven, please enlighten us." The martial emperors bowed. They were eager to learn what they wanted from Qin Shujian. If an epoch was really about to be destroyed, what was the point of pursuing the things they had been pursuing? He looked at the martial emperors. Qin Shujian said, "The destruction of an epoch is due to the existence of a true power outside the universe. The true power is constantly nibbling away at the universe, causing it to collapse, and ultimately leading to the destruction of the epoch. Strictly speaking, the universe and the greater 1,000 realms that we exist in exist at the level of illusion. Whether it's you or me, we can't escape from the level of illusion. As for the inhumans you speak of, I call them players. They are existences from the true plane. In the eyes of the players, we are fictional characters. The vast greater thousand realms is equivalent to a game in their eyes.
Boom.
When Qin Shujian finished speaking, all the immortals' expressions changed. Even someone as strong as Emperor Zhao Qingfeng, who had a firm Dao heart, was shaken after hearing this news. Apart from that, some immortals even lost their Dao hearts. The demon emperor shook his head with a look of disbelief. Emperor of Heaven means that we are fictional characters and don't exist at all. No, that's impossible. That's right. I can clearly feel my own power. How can I not exist? Impossible. Many immortals shook their heads in denial, not daring to believe Qin Shujian's words. When they saw the calm expression on the Emperor of Heaven's face, their hearts sank again. At this moment, Emperor Zhao barely suppressed the shock in his heart. His face regained its calmness as he cupped his hands and said, "If we are fictional characters and everything is just a game to the Inhumans and players, I don't think the Emperor of Heaven is willing to accept this." Hearing this, the others were also stunned. That's right. If this world was fictional and their existences were fake, would the Emperor of Heaven in front of them tolerate such a situation? After all, he knew some truths. For a moment, all the immortals' gazes fell on Qin Shujian. Chapter 11-12. Of course not. Qin Shujian smiled, then his expression turned cold. Everyone says that I am in control of my own fate and not the heavens. I deeply agree with that. There is no clear boundary between reality and illusion. There is only a difference in power. When the power of illusion is weak, we are like ants in front of reality. However, if we are stronger than reality, then we can destroy reality with a wave of our hand. In the inner hall of the heavenly palace, the deities lowered their heads and pondered about something. Qin Shujian said, when the first era was destroyed, there were some experts who were unwilling to die and wanted to steal the power of reality to get rid of the essence of illusion. Unfortunately, the first era failed. The remaining experts plotted again in the second era, but the second era also failed. Every time an era is destroyed, there will be a rebirth. However, every rebirth of an era will cause the size of the universe to shrink. Compared to the first era, the current era is much smaller than the first era. Hearing that, the deities were shocked again. Xiao Qingfeng's expression was solemn. Emperor of Heaven, do you mean that when the universe is as small as it can be, there will be no way for an era to be reborn? That's right. Qin Shujian nodded. When that happens, all living beings in the universe will be completely annihilated. Even Dao fruit experts won't have any right to resist when surrounded by true power. Even Dao fruit would die. After hearing this news, many of the deities calmed down a lot. At the end of an era, only Dao fruit could survive, but at the end, even Dao fruit could not survive. However, what really troubled them was that the universe would not be reborn. After all, when that time came, who knew how many billions of years it would be? With the lifespan of a perfected immortal in the Great Thousand World, they would definitely not be able to live until then. Unless they could break through the threshold of perfected immortal. Qin Shujian continued, although the universe is surrounded by the power of reality and will be destroyed at a certain time, in this era, strictly speaking, there is a long time before the universe is destroyed. But as you can see, there are many anomalies in the world right now. Just as you think, this is a sign that the world is about to face a great calamity. If it is not overcome, then the world will be completely destroyed. Hearing this, many immortals and deities remained silent, waiting for the other party to continue. Some things are very complicated to explain, but if I explain it in a simpler way, you will understand a lot more. Qin Shujian pondered for a moment and decided to put it simply. A long time ago, there were a few worlds where the Daos of heaven and earth collapsed, and the worlds were slowly approaching their end. The heavenly Daos of those worlds were unwilling to be destroyed, so they wanted to find a way to allow the worlds to continue. Later on, those few worlds discovered the existence of the upper-class world. Although the Great Thousand World was only an illusory world, There was a vast universe beyond the Great Thousand World. The universe is vast. Even if it's something at the level of an illusion, the power contained within it can be said to be endless. If any world can devour the power of the universe, then it has the right to renew the myriad Daos and restore the world to its peak. He paused. Qin Shu Jian continued. But here's the problem. It's not just one world that's eyeing the universe, but several worlds. In this way, it's impossible for any world to swallow the universe alone. Therefore, those worlds are waiting for an opportunity to swallow the universe alone. In order to further expand their control over the universe, the heavenly Daos of those worlds began to arrange for living beings to enter and expand their own power bit by bit through nibbling. Since he had already said that all the immortals and deities understood many things. Si Hanhai said, so the player's world wants to swallow the universe, and those players are actually invaders sent by the player's world? You're right. Qin Shu Jian nodded approvingly.
Then.
Someone was puzzled. Then, what method does the player's world use to nibble away the power of the universe? Hearing this, Qin Shu Jian patiently explained, as everyone knows, the world and the universe are mainly composed of rules. Therefore, the direction of nibbling is naturally from the rules. If it's from the rules, then the players have to come into contact with the rules. The Demon Emperor pondered for a moment. Then, he looked at Qin Shu Jian and voiced his question. If you want to come into contact with the rules, you have to reach the Saint Realm. We can completely restrict the players before they come into contact with the Saint Realm. In this way, the heavenly Daos of the player's world won't have a chance to nibble away the rules. The North Sea Emperor's words make sense. The other immortals and deities also nodded in agreement. That's right. If the player's world wanted to nibble away the power of the Great Thousand World, and even the universe, then they could only start from the rules. And if the players wanted to come into contact with the rules, they had to be at least the third level of the celestial being. In this way, as long as the players were restricted and not allowed to reach this level, then any problem could be solved. Facing the question of the deities, Qin Shu Jian calmly said, you have to understand that the weak have no right to talk to the strong. In the eyes of the player's world, we are the weak. If we restrict all players from breaking through, then the heavenly Daos of the player's world will immediately awaken. At that time, the four players' worlds will join forces to attack, and the universe will fall apart in an instant. They want to swallow the universe alone, just like how we want to eat a delicious meal. If the food resists, they will no longer care whether it's delicious or not. Instead, they will destroy it first. The deities were silent. Since the establishment of the heavenly court, they had been high and mighty existences. But from Qin Shu Jian's mouth, they were no different from ants. The strong contrast made many people feel a little uncomfortable. However, the other party's words also made them understand that this was the truth. And at this time, Qin Shu Jian continued. Nibbling away the world and the universe has never only been reflected in whether the players have comprehended the rules or not. Every word and action is the way, sitting and lying down is also the way. As long as the players enter the Great Thousand World, their actions at every moment will make the heavenly Daos of the player's world speed up the nibbling of the rules, especially in martial arts and cultivation methods. Any martial arts and cultivation methods more or less involve the level of the rules. It's just a matter of strength. Every time a player practices martial arts and cultivation methods, the nibbling of the heavenly Daos of the player's world will intensify. Chapter 11:13. In the inner hall of the heavenly palace, Qin Shu Jian sat on the throne, looking down at the gods below. At this moment no one spoke, because the Emperor of Heaven's words had already shocked the gods. It would take a long time to digest such shocking news. They only understood now. No matter what they did, there was no way to stop the invasion of the player's world. At most, it was just a matter of speed. Immediately, Xiao Chengfeng said, so the phenomenon of heaven and earth now means that the player's world is about to officially launch an attack. That's right. Because of some changes, the player's world is finally about to launch an attack. I believe you all can feel it now. The power you control seems to be getting lower and lower. In fact, that's caused by the invasion of the real world. As living beings of the illusory world, in front of the real world, there's no way for us to resist. But now, the real world and the illusory world are merging. Under such circumstances, we won't die, but we'll gradually reduce the power we control until we completely fall into the dust. Qin Shujian said calmly. Fall into the dust. Some of the gods turned pale. Some of them had been cultivating for thousands of years. If their hard work was all for naught, the blow would be too great. While the gods were terrified, Qin Shujian said, but fortune and misfortune go hand in hand. Although it's a disaster now, it's also an opportunity for us. As long as we can take advantage of the fusion of the real world and the illusory world, we can comprehend and control the power of the real world. Then, we'll be qualified to get rid of our illusory identity and step into the real world. At this point, Qin Shujian stood up from the throne. A terrifying aura swept out like a wave. In front of this aura, the gods felt their minds sway, and their bodies almost fell. Their gazes all fell on the Emperor of Heaven who was above the throne. Qin Shujian spread out his hands. There was a hint of madness on his face. Getting rid of the illusory and retaining the real is the goal we've always pursued. We're not willing to accept the destruction of the era. We're not willing to be as weak as ants. Then we'll rise up and fight for everything we need. The player world is about to attack us. This is a disaster for us, but also an opportunity for us. We can use this opportunity to grasp true power. If we can devour the player world and fuse the power of multiple player worlds, we will be able to ascend to another level. By then, the gods of the heavenly court would no longer be bound by the 129,600 years of lifespan. Immortality is right before your eyes. Live forever. Upon hearing Qin Shujian's words, most of the immortals' breathing quickened. His eyes turned red as he looked at the other party. That's right. What were they after? Wasn't it all for the sake of immortality? However, there was a limit to the lifespan of a true immortal. 129,600 years was like a natural chasm. No one could break it. Over time, only true immortals would pursue other things. However, if there was really a chance to live forever, then other pursuits would become insignificant. The demon emperor looked excited. Emperor of Heaven, are you saying that as long as we can grasp this opportunity, we can truly live forever? Qin Shujian sat back on the throne. His originally crazed expression also returned to normal. He gave an accurate answer to the demon emperor's question. I can't be sure if you can live forever, but I can be sure that as long as you enter the real world, then the lifespan limit of a true immortal like you will definitely be greatly increased. At that time, whether you can pursue true immortality or not will depend on you. I understand. The demon emperor suppressed the excitement in his heart, but his heart was still shaken. Although Qin Shujian's words were far from being immortal and long-sighted. However, being able to break the current lifespan limit already proved many things. As long as there was enough time, with his own talent and foundation, the demon emperor was confident that he could break through to a higher level. However, there were surprises and there were also people who were worried. For example, Emperor Zhao, Shao Qingfeng, and the others were all silent. In their opinion, although Qin Shujian's words sounded good, there was a big premise in it, and that was, what exactly did the boundless world have to contend with the player's world? If they couldn't contend with it, then all of their ideas would be empty words. At that time, the boundless world would be destroyed, the heavenly court would fall apart, and the thousands of races in the world would no longer exist. After thinking for a long time, Emperor Zhao finally cupped his hands. Emperor of Heaven, do we have the confidence to contend with the four players' worlds? If we can't, the thousands of races will no longer exist. Yes. Qin Shujian gave a short answer. However, this one sentence made everyone's hearts calm down. Immediately after, he said again, the heavenly Tao of the player's world is only in the awakening stage. It's not time to completely attack yet. According to my calculations, the player's world will only attack in 3 years at the earliest and 5 years at the longest. I'll give you 2 years to comprehend the power of the real world. At the same time, you can't reveal anything about the court meeting to the players. Otherwise, any race that reveals it will be exterminated. We understand. The gods bowed and replied in unison. The matter that was discussed in the court meeting this time was not only important, it completely determined the life and death of the boundless world, and even the universe. Under such circumstances, if the news were to spread and cause any changes, even extermination wouldn't be enough to make up for it. Qin Shujian said, in 2 years, each race can cultivate a portion of their strength. 2 years later, I will give you the next step. As long as you follow my plan, you don't have to worry too much. Yes, the gods replied again, although some of the immortals still had some doubts in their hearts. However, the current situation wasn't the time to ask too many questions. Seeing the morale of the gods being mobilized by him, Qin Shujian nodded to himself. Although the true main force of the war with the player's world wasn't the gods of the heavenly court, but the Dao fruit-level experts like himself. However, this didn't mean that the gods of the heavenly court were useless. In fact, the heavenly court and the myriad races would play a huge role in the future. Therefore, there was no way Qin Shujian would let such power go unchecked. In that case, it would really be a waste. When the court meeting was about to end, he gave a final warning. Remember, we can only win this battle and not lose. Once we lose, the myriad races will return to ruins. No one will be spared. I hope you all take it seriously. All right, you can all leave. Chapter 11:14. The court meeting ended. All the gods left the heavenly court and headed to their respective clans. Emperor Zhongyuan. A voice called out to Emperor Zhao. Hearing that, Emperor Zhao turned around and saw Xiao Qingfeng walking over in the air. War God, why are you looking for me? Are the humans confident in dealing with the calamity that the Emperor of Heaven mentioned? Xiao Qingfeng landed in front of Emperor Zhao. His expression was as solemn as it was during the court meeting. Confident. Emperor Zhao shook his head slightly. You heard what the Emperor of Heaven said. Even a Dao fruit powerhouse doesn't have much confidence in this battle, let alone the humans that you and I are from. All we can do now is to do our best. As soon as he finished speaking, Emperor Zhao stretched out his hand, and a wave of power was being nurtured in his hand. The Celestial Emperor is right. Our power is gradually weakening. There is a mysterious power that is spreading through the world. The power that true immortals like us can wield is gradually weakening in the face of this power. If we can't solve this problem, we will fall into the dust one day. The power condensed. Although it was powerful, however, compared to the past, it was much weaker. Moreover, whether it was Emperor Zhao or Xiao Qingfeng, they could clearly feel the decline in that power.
Yes, decline.
Almost every moment that passed, the power condensed in Emperor Zhao's hand weakened a little. Even if that little bit was very weak, almost undetectable. However, as the top powerhouses of the heavenly court, they could clearly feel it. This battle is troublesome. Xiao Qingfeng sighed. Qin Shujian sounded very confident during the court meeting. However, normal people could hear the danger of the myriad races from his words. This was not an ordinary race war, nor was it something that the ancient Demon Abyss invasion could compare to. The race war was good. The Demon Abyss invasion was good. Even if they failed, the myriad races still had a chance of survival.
But now,
if they failed in the battle with the player's world, the myriad races would have no way out. Where could they retreat to? At that time, the entire universe would be destroyed. All living beings in the universe had only one path: death. A way out. That didn't exist. Thinking of this, Xiao Qingfeng looked at Emperor Zhao. Speaking of which, I haven't returned to the human race for a long time. If Emperor Zhongyuan doesn't mind, I'd like to visit the human race. The war god has always been a part of the human race. If you want to return, you can do so at any time. Zhao Huang smiled. Also, I've been keeping Beiyun Marquis Mansion for you. If you have time, you can go back to Bayan Mansion, North Cloud Mansion, Northern Cloud Marquee Manor. Xiao Qingfeng looked a little dazed. Such a strange, yet familiar name. Ever since he had awakened the innate wisdom of his previous life, he had almost completely abandoned everything in this life. After all, compared to the Marquis Bayun's memories, the vast Song Immortal Lord's memories, which spanned tens of thousands of years, were much more extensive. The moment he awakened his innate wisdom, Immortal Lord Vast Song's memories had already gained the upper hand. It was just that Xiao Qingfeng had never faced this issue. Until now. His cultivation base grew higher day by day. The influence of Vast Song Immortal Lord's memories began to fade. Only then did he recall his memories as Marquis Bayun. Bayun Marquis Mansion? I will. Xiao Qingfeng murmured, then nodded his head. I'll give the order. The war god can go back at any time. I'll take my leave first. Emperor Zhao could see that Xiao Qingfeng was not in a good state, so he didn't disturb him too much. After saying that, he left first. Xiao Qingfeng was the only one left in the heaven and earth squall layer. Memories of the past. Scenes flashed through his mind. He thought of when he was a child, then he thought of when he was Marquis Bayun, then he thought of when he had awakened his innate wisdom and abandoned his identity as Marquis Bayun. Everything in the past. It made Xiao Qingfeng's expression change. He didn't know how long had passed. Only then did he wake up from his past memories. Ever since I awakened my innate wisdom, I'm not really Xiao Qingfeng anymore. I'm the reincarnation of Immortal Lord Vast Song. The so-called Xiao Qingfeng is just a name. Xiao Qingfeng laughed at himself. He thought that as long as he remembered Xiao Qingfeng's name, he would still be the original Xiao Qingfeng. But seriously, anyone could have a name. If he could be called Xiao Qingfeng, others could be called Xiao Qingfeng too. When he awakened his innate wisdom, he was completely controlled by Immortal Lord Vast Song's memories. In his sea of consciousness, Skybreaking Halberd looked at Xiao Qingfeng's changes and was a little confused. Immortal Lord Vast Song is you, and Xiao Qingfeng is also you. What's the difference? He was worried that his Immortal Lord might have developed an inner demon. The more powerful the existence, the harder it was to develop an inner demon. But correspondingly, if there was an inner demon, it would often cause a lot of trouble. Don't disturb him. Let him figure it out himself, Wu Ming scolded. He could see what kind of state Xiao Qingfeng was in now. After this incident, it would really determine who the other party was. It was Immortal Lord Vast Song. It was still Marquis Bayun.
To be honest,
Wu Ming didn't have much contact with Immortal Lord Vast Song. Compared to the ancient Vast Song, he preferred the current Marquis Bayun. Because Vast Song was high and mighty, Marquis Bayun was more humane. On the other side. Hearing Skybreaking Halberd's words, Xiao Qingfeng couldn't help but shake his head. It's different. Immortal Lord Vast Song is already dead. He died in ancient times. The person who is reborn is Marquis Bayun, Xiao Qingfeng. Even after awakening his innate wisdom, he should still be Marquis Bayun, not the so-called Immortal Lord Vast Song. At this point, a smile appeared on his face. At that moment, the fog that had been covering him for a long time quietly disappeared. Many things that he couldn't see through were clear at this moment. His mind was cleansed. In the dark, some kind of unpredictable change was happening. Xiao Qingfeng realized. His declining power seemed to be warming up little by little. At this moment, he was even happier. Yes, Vast Song is already dead. I'm not Immortal Lord Vast Song, Xiao Qingfeng, but Marquis Bayun Xiao Qingfeng. He laughed out loud. Xiao Qingfeng was in a good mood. Understanding himself allowed him to indirectly master a part of real power. Immediately, he went to the mortal world. As for where he was going, it was Bayun Mansion, one of the 9 mansions of Great Zhao in the eastern continent. While Xiao Qingfeng was comprehending himself, Qin Shujian turned his head to look in a certain direction in the astral wind layer. His eyes directly penetrated everything and fell accurately on the other party. Then, a faint smile appeared on his face. I didn't expect that the person who grasped real power the fastest among the gods of the heavenly court would be him. Chapter 11:15. Xiao Qingfeng's change could not be hidden from Qin Shujian's perception. In terms of true power, he was one of the first people to master it. Towards death and life. The red lotus of purgation that he finally comprehended was a manifestation of true power. In comparison, Hong Jun and the others might have mastered true power, but they might not have mastered as much as Qin Shujian.
Right now.
Xiao Qingfeng could be considered to have mastered true power. However, the true power that the other party mastered was only a very weak trace. But even a trace could be said to have taken an important step. Understanding one's heart. In other words, it was an epiphany. At this moment, when the power of reality and illusion intertwined and fused, it was not impossible for one to gain an epiphany and use this opportunity to grasp true power. Go and master true power. The smile on Qin Shujian's face became crazy again. Ever since he became the Emperor of Heaven, he had been much more cautious in doing things. He had no confidence in things. He would never take risks. Of course. It was also because ever since he broke through to the Tao fruit level, there were no threats in the vast thousand domains. This was one reason. Another reason. It was because Qin Shujian had been restraining himself. The more critical the moment, the more cautious he was. He was afraid that after waiting for so many years, he would fail at the last moment. However, he later realized that he had too many concerns. Many times. There was no need to worry about those things. Therefore, after understanding this, Qin Shujian directly let the God-Slayer transform, even if it would awaken the heavenly axiom of several players' worlds. So, what if the heavenly axiom has awakened? Why would I be afraid of the heavenly axiom now? If it was not for the difference between reality and illusion, I would have killed my way into the player's world long ago. However, this does not mean that I am afraid of them. Qin Shujian's eyes were cold. He wanted to fight. Then, he would fight. There was no need to worry about it at all. Moreover, now, even if the heavenly axiom of the player's world awakened, those heavenly axioms might not join forces to attack the vast thousand domains. In the face of the temptation of the universe, any heavenly axiom would want to swallow it alone. If they could swallow the universe, the benefits were self-evident. Actually, the reason was very simple. He compared the heavenly Tao of the player's world to cultivators. No cultivator would be willing to share a great opportunity with others if it was right in front of them. In particular, this opportunity was clearly something that could be obtained by relying on one's own strength, and it was even more impossible to share it with others. Therefore, if all the heavenly axioms in the player's world were to awaken, it was very likely that they would not attack the great wide world first. Instead, they would first kill each other, and then the victors would divide the great wide world and the universe. Come on. You'll suffer. Qin Shujian murmured in a low voice. Shortly after, he had also entered a state of seclusion. There was no other way. Now that the invasion of true power was becoming more and more serious, if he did not take advantage of this opportunity to control true power, he would easily fall from the Tao fruit level. If he fell to the Tao fruit level, at that time, his own strength would be greatly weakened. It was impossible for Qin Shujian to allow his strength to weaken in a limited time. Thus, it was imperative for him to grasp more true power. As Qin Shujian entered seclusion once again, the myriad races of the world also fell silent. The court meeting was over. All the immortals and gods understood. Soon, what awaited the myriad races would be a monstrous calamity. A collision between reality and illusion. It was destined that only one side could win, and the fate of the other side was self-evident. Destruction. It was destined. Therefore, although the immortals and gods understood that they were on the side of the illusion and were at a disadvantage, they would not be willing to die just like that. Resist. That was absolutely necessary. It would take at least 3 years, and at most 5 years. The great calamity would arrive. At that time, whether they could survive or not would depend on whether they could grasp true power. If they could successfully grasp it, they might not be able to win, but they would at least have a partial chance of success. Therefore, even the establishment of Buddhism and the establishment of the underworld did not cause those immortals and gods to go crazy. In fact, they even ordered their respective races to comprehend the power of heaven and earth, and they had to gain something in a short period of time. Regarding this order, many living beings of the myriad races were confused. However, they wanted to ask the reason, but the experts of the myriad races kept their mouths shut. However, someone had secretly leaked some information to them, telling them that a monstrous calamity would descend upon them soon. At that time, those who were not strong enough would be destroyed in the calamity. The moment the word calamity came out, it directly made the living beings of the myriad races not dare to have any wishful thinking. However, when the myriad races fell into silence, the players were much more active. Several player worlds had entered a state of spirit aura recovery. The strength of each player had increased to different degrees. In order to find the corresponding cultivation method, the players could only search in the boundless world. For this, it also caused a lot of trouble.
Kill.
A group of players was besieging a small race branch. In that small race branch, the strongest person was only at the 7th level of the celestial being realm. However, although there were no 7th level celestial beings among the players, there was no lack of celestial being realm experts. A battle ensued. That small race branch suffered heavy losses. At this moment, a terrifying aura rose, shocking all the players who were attacking that race. That boss has awakened. As the leader of the team, Lu Qinghong instantly understood what was going on. Hearing that, the other players also had solemn expressions. Lu Qinghong said in a deep voice, "From the news, that boss should be at the 7th level of the celestial being realm. The attacks of the mighty experts are fierce. All physical cultivator players, stand in front and be sure to restrain the opponent. Then, everyone else will attack with all their might. I guarantee that we will kill the opponent in the shortest time possible." He gave the order in an orderly manner. The so-called physical cultivator players. It was the physical sanctification system. It was just that the players were used to calling them physical cultivators. In fact, the physical cultivator players' resistance to attacks was indeed much stronger than other players. Physical sanctification. What was tempered was the physique. Any physical cultivator player's physique had been greatly tempered. In terms of physical defense alone, it was not something that other players could compare to. When all the players pulled away, the slumbering 7th level celestial being of this race branch finally woke up completely. A body that was like a mountain. A fierce and brutal aura swept across the world. Roar. Chapter 11:16. You're courting death. The giant beast woke up and saw its people being slaughtered. Then it looked at the ant-like players. Its huge eyes were filled with anger.
Kill.
It had to be killed. Everyone who dared to slaughter its own race deserved to die. Thinking of this, the giant beast slammed its claw down fiercely. Its power seemed to be able to split the river and the sea. Be careful. Feeling the power that could destroy the world, Lu Qinghong's expression changed. He made a gesture with his hand. When the vital essence surged, it turned into a shield and condensed on his body. It was obvious. As the leader of the player team, Lu Qinghong was also a physical cultivation player. The giant claw fell. The expected destruction didn't happen. Even the shield only had a slight ripple. Then there was nothing else. Silence. The atmosphere was dead silent. The giant beast and Lu Qinghong looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. How could it be? The giant beast roared in its heart. It didn't believe that its full-strength claw couldn't kill the ant in front of it. Not to mention killing it, it couldn't even break the shield. What's the situation? On the other side, Lu Qinghong was also stunned. The aura of the giant beast in front of him couldn't be faked. Unless the other party was strong in appearance, but weak in reality. Otherwise, even if he made a breakthrough in his strength, he would be able to casually cast a spell and possess boundless power. But, looking at his interface, Lu Qinghong also gave up this guess. break through. How could it be? The realm on the interface was no different from before. The scene was silent for a few seconds.
Soon.
Lu Qinghong came back to his senses. He waved his hand. Kill. No matter what the reason was. Since the giant beast couldn't do anything to him, there was nothing else to say. He would destroy the other party's race. Then he would plunder the cultivation method of the race and break through to a higher realm. In the eyes of the giant beast, it saw the bug below jump up. The vital essence condensed into a huge long sword and slashed at it.
Such an attack.
It made the giant beast reveal a look of disdain. It didn't use any means to resist. It just stretched out a front claw. It seemed that with just one blow, it could destroy the vital essence long sword. Pucci, blood splattered. A claw the size of a small mountain fell to the ground. The giant beast looked at its missing front claw and was stunned for a moment before it felt a sharp pain in its heart. Immediately, it let out a mournful wail. Roar. The player who had cut off the giant beast's claw was also stunned for a long time. Then, with a face full of excitement, he continued to attack the giant beast.
Pucci.
Pucci. The 7th-tier celestial behemoths were so weak that they didn't even have the right to fight back against the players who were only at the 1st or 2nd tier of the celestial realm. They were easily dismembered. Clean up the battlefield, Lu Qinghong ordered. Then, he came to the front of the giant beast's corpse, his eyes still filled with uncertainty. Based on the EXP the colossal beasts provided and the attributes Shifeng saw, it was obvious that they were both at the 7th tier of the Heavens realm. However, experts in the 7th level of the Celestial realm were like experts in the 7th level of the Divine Martial realm, easily killed by them. Until now, Lu Qinghong didn't know how to react. Is he too weak? Or have we become stronger? He wasn't sure. In today's battle, Lu Qinghong was prepared to fight a bloody battle and sacrifice many players to snatch the cultivation method of this race's branch. But he didn't expect. Not a single person died. The strongest expert of this race was easily killed by them. Things were too easy. It was completely unexpected. Sacred Lord, recently, the mutants have become more and more rampant. Many sects have been attacked, causing us to suffer heavy losses. This matter needs to be decided by the Sacred Lord. Inside the Qianyuan sacred ground, an elder bowed his head and said. Zhengfang, who was sitting at the top, said calmly, with the strength of the mutants, what qualifications do they have to destroy the sects? I remember that the strongest experts of the mutants today are only a few who have entered the Saint Realm. He had been the Sacred Lord of the Qianyuan sacred ground for a while.
Now,
his face was less easygoing and more dignified. Sitting next to him was the former Sacred Lord of the Qianyuan Sacred Ground, who is also the current Deputy Sacred Lord of the Qianyuan Sacred Ground, Qin Yuanbai. After he finished speaking, Qin Yuanbai's eyes flickered. Sacred Lord, the mutants are not simple now. I received some news in the Heavenly Court, but I haven't had time to tell you. Now that the mutants have destroyed the sects, this is not a trivial matter. In my opinion, we should suppress it with all our strength. The mutants have a herd mentality. If we don't suppress them, when their momentum grows stronger, I'm afraid that the remaining mutants will follow suit.
Hearing this,
Zheng Fang tilted his head and looked at the other party deeply. He understood. The position of Sacred Lord had fallen into the hands of Yuanzong. The sect master of the Nine Palace sect had a lot of unwillingness in his heart. The other party was constantly thinking about how to take back the position of the Holy Master.
Now,
it was clear that Qin Yuanbai knew something that he didn't. After thinking for a moment, Zheng Fang nodded. Deputy Sacred Lord Qin is right. The mutants have a herd mentality. If we don't suppress the momentum of the mutants, we will be in great trouble. At that time, the scene from decades ago may repeat itself. Decades ago, tens of millions of mutants joined forces to attack the Qianyuan sacred ground. In the end, the first Sacred Lord, who was the current Emperor of Heaven, successfully suppressed the arrogance of the mutants. As a result, this was the reason why the mutants didn't dare to run rampant at will. Now, Decades had passed. Some of the mutants had forgotten the deterrence of the past. Moreover, the mutant strength had increased, and some people felt that they could do it again.
So,
Now, the destruction of the sacred ground had happened. Zheng Fang was positive about suppressing the mutants with all his strength. After he finished speaking, Qin Yuanbai added, "In addition, the mutants can't be underestimated. If you want to take action, you must do your best. Moreover, this matter is of great importance. It's best to communicate with the Great Zhao." As soon as he finished speaking, immediately someone objected. "Deputy Lord, our Qianyuan sacred ground has always been on par with the Great Zhao Empire. We have never been weaker than the Great Zhao Empire. If we ask for help from the Great Zhao Empire just because of the matter of the mutants, it would be a bit embarrassing." Hearing this, many elders of the Qianyuan sacred ground nodded in agreement. That's right. Since the establishment of the Qianyuan sacred ground, it had been on par with the Great Zhao. Now, it was a bit embarrassing to ask for help from the Great Zhao because of the mutants, even if Qin Yuanbai said the word discuss. But in the eyes of others,
discuss.
In fact, it was no different from asking for help. And asking for help, it meant that the Qianyuan sacred ground was not as good as the Great Zhao. Chapter 11:17. This time, the matter of the players is not as simple as you think. Not only do I have to discuss it with the Great Zhao, but if necessary, I have to go to the heavenly court in person. Qin Yuanbai glanced at them and said lightly. From the information he had received so far, the sudden attack of the players must be related to the upcoming great calamity. His current identity. He was also qualified to participate in the court meeting. He was also very clear about the affairs of the players. After a pause, Qin Yuanbai looked at Zheng Fang. "Sacred Lord, there are some things that I can't say. Anyway, this matter of the players must not be taken lightly. Any carelessness can bring disaster to the Qianyuan sacred ground. What I said is not an alarmist." Hearing this, Zheng Fang fell silent. He didn't answer immediately, but thought about whether the other party's words were true or not. After a long time, Zheng Fang nodded. "Since the Vice Holy Lord has already said so, then let's do as he says. This time, we'll first send someone to discuss with the Great Zhao Holy Land about the Inhumans. Then the Holy Land will combine our forces to suppress the Inhumans. Destroying the sacred ground is equivalent to destroying the foundation of the sacred ground. This matter is absolutely intolerable." Yes, as the sacred lord, Zheng Fang had spoken, so the others couldn't say anything.
Then,
only after Zheng Fang handed over a few more matters did those elders finally leave. In the main hall, soon there were only 3 people left. One was Zheng Fang, one was Qin Yuanbai, and the last was Fang Xinglan. The current Qianyuan sacred ground. It had a sacred lord and 2 deputy sacred lords. At this moment, Zheng Fang and Fang Xinglan's eyes fell on Qin Yuanbai. Immediately, Zheng Fang said, "If you have something to say, just say it. It seems that you have received some news in the heavenly court." Qin Yuanbai's strange behavior just now. It was obvious that the other party must have received some news. Otherwise, he wouldn't say so much. In the face of the inquiry, Qin Yuanbai didn't hide anything. He directly told all the things he heard in the heavenly court meeting. Quiet. It was very quiet. Zheng Fang and Fang Xinglan were both dumbfounded, unable to react to this news. The real world. The fabricated world. Players. Mutants. A long time later, Fang Xinglan's voice trembled. "Are you sure you're not spouting nonsense?"
He found it hard to believe.
It turned out that he was just a virtual character in the eyes of others, a person who didn't exist at all. In the eyes of the players, what they pursued was just a game. I see. Zheng Fang thought of a lot of things. He also thought of a lot of things that didn't make sense in the past, but he felt that they were very reasonable. For example, why couldn't players die? For example, why was he able to revive after being killed by other players, but not after being killed by someone from the same world? This had happened before. In Zheng Fang's opinion, it was very reasonable. He didn't even think too much about it. Until now. After Qin Yuanbai poked through that layer of window paper and let him see the truth behind it, this holy master suddenly came to a realization. It turned out that, at the very beginning, it had already explained a lot of things. It was just that there was a force in the dark that shielded him, making him ignore all kinds of unreasonable things, and in the end, he automatically explained it to a reasonable point. Immediately, Zheng Fang thought of another thing. Then now that the players have destroyed sex, what is their purpose? Could it be that the world of players has officially launched an attack? Not necessarily. The Emperor of Heaven said that it would take at least 3 years for the great calamity to come. Now, 3 years is not long, but it's not short either. What the players are doing now may be for themselves. Qin Yuanbai shook his head. The purpose of the players was very simple, which was to obtain high-level cultivation techniques and martial arts.
Now,
the purpose of destroying sex was probably this. It's just that, Qin Yuanbai paused. The overall strength of the players is not strong. In those sects that have been destroyed, there is no lack of almighties at the 10th level of the celestial being. No matter how strong the players are, it's impossible to destroy those sects so quickly. This question was also something that he couldn't figure out. At the side, Fang Xinglan suddenly regretted it. He regretted that he went into seclusion and didn't go to the heavenly court to participate in the court assembly. Originally, with his identity as the array ancestor, there was no problem in participating in the court assembly. At the back, it was because he had some experience in array formations that he planned to go into seclusion to break through, so he didn't go to the court assembly. In addition, there were many court assemblies before, but there were no important matters. In Fang Xinglan's mind, he didn't have to go to the court assembly. But what he didn't expect was, it was because he didn't go to the court assembly this time that such a big thing happened. If he attended the court assembly, then he would definitely know more.
Subsequently,
Fang Xinglan hesitated and said, "You said that the real power is completely above the illusory level. Then, is it possible that the players are already able to use a part of their real power here? That's why those sects were destroyed," as his voice faded. Qin Yuanbai and Zheng Fang were shocked. That's right. Why didn't they think of this? That's right. The cultivators of the boundless world, in terms of cultivation, were much higher than the players. But there was one thing to know. The cultivators of the boundless world, no matter how high their cultivation was, only had the power of the illusory level. In comparison, if the players were able to use their real power, then the cultivators of the boundless world would have no chance of fighting against them. If that's the case, then no matter how many powerhouses we send over, it will be useless. Zheng Fang's expression was very serious. He didn't know how big the difference was between the illusory and the real. Looking at the current situation, even many powerhouses of the 10th level of the celestial being realm had died in the hands of the players. If the true immortals couldn't deal with the players, then it would be really troublesome. The same logic. If the true immortals could deal with the players at this stage, then the situation wouldn't be completely out of control. I'll make a trip to the Great Zhao. That Zhao Emperor will probably also encounter some problems. If it's convenient for you, Deputy Sacred Lord Fang, please make a trip to the heavenly court. This matter can be big or small. It's better to let the Emperor of Heaven know. As Qin Yuanbai spoke, his gaze fell on Zheng Fang. No matter what, right now, the Sacred Lord was still the person in front of him. The one who was qualified to make the decision was the other party. A moment later, Zheng Fang nodded. Let's do as you say. This matter is no longer related to the Qianyuan sacred ground or the human race. It involves all races in the world. We can't be careless. After making a decision, Qin Yuanbai and Fang Xinglan went to the Great Zhao and the Heavenly Court respectively. Chapter 11:18. Heavenly Court. As the array ancestor, Fang Xinglan was naturally unimpeded. But when he reached the gate of the Heavenly Palace, he was stopped by someone. To be precise, he was stopped by an osmanthus tree. The Emperor of Heaven is in seclusion. Unless it's an emergency, I can't meet the Emperor of Heaven. What's the matter, array ancestor? Muyang revealed his figure, looked at the person in front of him, and said calmly, "The current him." It was no longer the osmanthus tree in Yuan sect. The spiritual energy in the heavenly court was rich, and as the guard in front of the heavenly palace, Qin Shu Jian would often emit some Dao rhymes when he was in seclusion. Muyang took the opportunity to absorb the Dao rhymes to cultivate. After a long time, his cultivation also improved by leaps and bounds.
Now,
although he had not broken through to the upper three true immortals, he was not far from it. Even Fang Xinglan was shocked by the formless aura emanating from his body. Hearing this, Fang Xinglan calmed himself down, cupped his hands and said, "I have an important matter to meet the Emperor of Heaven. This matter concerns the rise and fall of the human race, so I hope you can pass on the message." It concerns the rise and fall of the human race. Muyang was slightly shocked. At this time, he did not dare to hesitate too much. Although the human race was one of the 10,000 races in the world, it was also the race that Qin Shu Jian came from. If the human race was destroyed, that Emperor of Heaven might be furious.
So,
after saying this, Muyang hurriedly walked towards the heavenly palace. "Wait for me here, I'll go and pass on the message." Fang Xinglan heaved a sigh of relief in her heart and stood in place without moving. After a while, Muyang walked out from inside. "The Emperor of Heaven asked you to go in." "Thank you." Fang Xinglan cupped his hands and thanked him, then stepped into the heavenly palace. Passing through the outer hall, entering the inner hall, the view of the heavenly palace suddenly widened, making Fang Xinglan feel as if he was in the middle of the galaxy. At the Emperor's throne, a person sat upright. The invisible aura emitted from his body, as if he was the supreme ruler of the galaxy. Even a true immortal did not dare to look him in the eye. Shortly after, Fang Xinglan bowed and said, "Official Fang Xinglan greets the Emperor of Heaven. Formation Ancestor, why have you come from the human race?" Qin Shu Jian said slowly. He was originally in seclusion to comprehend his true strength, but he was disturbed. If it was an ordinary person, they would have been enraged long ago. However, Qin Shu Jian now had a strong control over his emotions, so even if he was a little dissatisfied, it didn't affect his mood. He didn't notice anything. Fang Xinglan lowered her head and reported everything truthfully. "Emperor of Heaven, a few days ago, many players attacked various human sects, causing a large number of sects to be destroyed. Among those sects, there was no lack of cultivators at the 10th level of the Sky Human Realm. With the current strength of the players, it was impossible for them to destroy those sects so easily. That's why the Holy Land suspects that this might have something to do with the real power. That's why I'm here. Players are attacking the humans." Qin Shujian's eyes flickered. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he closed his eyes and silently calculated something. After a long time, his tightly closed eyes opened again, but there was a hint of anger in them. "You're right. The players attacking the sects is related to the true strength. Although the players can't use too much of their true strength, with the gap between reality and illusion, even a trace of their true strength can make them invincible in the same realm. Unless you have also comprehended the true strength, otherwise, there is no possibility of contending against the players in the same realm." Qin Shujian's expression was indifferent.
below.
Fang Xinglan's expression changed greatly when she heard this. If that's the case, then the human race will definitely not be able to stop so many players. "Emperor of Heaven, please help the human race to save this great calamity." Invincible in the same realm. In other words, almost no one in the Sky Human Realm could resist the players. What about the true immortals? Even if the true immortals could resist the players, how many could they resist? One had to know. Under the situation of being invincible in the same realm, every player in the Sky Human Realm could be regarded as an expert at the limit of the Sky Human Realm. Although those below the true immortal realm were all ants, when there were many ants, they could still bite people to death. At present, there were only a few true immortals in the human race, so there was no possibility of contending against them.
Now,
Fang Xinglan could only pin her hopes on the Emperor of Heaven. Otherwise, the Qianyuan sacred ground would be in big trouble. Qin Shujian stretched out his hand, and a long crystal sword appeared directly in his hand. This weapon is at the level of Zhu Bing. Give it to Zheng Fang. Zhu Bing can cut through reality and illusion. He can even directly obliterate players. With this divine weapon, the players will be a lot more afraid. After that, Qian Shanxue flew from his hand and slowly landed in front of Fang Xinglan. Zhu Bing. Looking at the crystal sword in front of her, Fang Xinglan found it difficult to associate it with the legendary Zhu Bing. Because, in her memory, Zhu Bing should be made of stone. But the sword in front of her didn't look like it was made of stone at all. She was a little suspicious. But Fang Xinglan didn't think too much about it. She reached out and wanted to hold the hilt. Buzz! The crystal sword vibrated, and an extremely sharp sword qi leaked out from it. She was caught off guard. Fang Xinglan's palm was cut by the sword qi, and blood dripped down. The sudden change shocked her, and she re-examined Qian Shanxue in front of her. Zhu Bing was strong, but it was impossible for him to hurt her with just a wisp of sword qi. One had to know. He was not as simple as an ordinary true immortal. After obtaining the deity position of the Array Ancestor, his strength had already reached the peak of the lower 3 true immortal realms. He was only one step away from breaking through to the middle 3 true immortal realms. Although among the gods of the heavenly court, such a realm was at the bottom. But among all the clans in the world, this kind of realm could be considered to be among the top of the group. Even so, they were not qualified to touch the sword. The shock in Fang Xinglan's heart was self-evident. Qin Shujian said, "This sword is not an ordinary Zhu Bing. Take it to the Qianyuan sacred ground. Only the strongest person in the sacred ground is qualified to borrow its power." Just borrow it? The strongest person in the sacred ground was only qualified to borrow its power. Fang Xinglan couldn't help but blurt out. After saying this, she also realized that she had misspoken. This magic weapon belonged to the Emperor of Heaven in front of her. She undoubtedly felt that she was coveting the magic weapon. If the other party blamed her, it would be troublesome. Qin Shujian laughed. If the Qianyuan sacred ground is qualified to be recognized as the master of this magic weapon, then I will give it to you. But you have to have the ability to do so. After a pause, he waved his hand to drive her away. Well, let's talk about it later. Take this sword back. I'll take my leave. Fang Xinglan bowed. After glancing at Qian Shanxue, she tried to turn around and leave. Sure enough, after he left, Qian Shanxue, who was quietly floating in the air, also flew behind him at a speed that was neither fast nor slow. P.S. It's the end of the month. Chapter 1119. Players are indeed malignant tumors. After Fang Xinglan left, Qin Shujian's face finally turned cold. Malignant tumors. They were really malignant tumors. However, now that the real power had been integrated, allowing them to grasp a trace of real power, they began to massacre the human race wantonly. It could be seen from here. The players had never treated the creatures of the boundless world as living beings. In the past, the players were well-behaved and didn't do much. This was because with their strength at that time, they were not qualified to resist the heavenly court, nor were they qualified to resist the myriad races. However, not being qualified to resist didn't mean that the players didn't want to resist. Just like now, once they had power, they began to kill wantonly. From the beginning, the players and the creatures of the boundless world stood on opposite sides. There was no possibility of peaceful coexistence. In the sea of consciousness, after the transformation, the God Slayer was invisibly swallowing and spitting out blade energy, constantly tempering Qin Shujian's sea of consciousness. The Tao Fruit's sea of consciousness was tyrannical. Under normal circumstances, there was naturally no need to temper it. However, after the transformation, the God Slayer was different. After reaching the immortal level, the blade energy he swallowed and spat out was no ordinary blade energy, but a terrifying blade energy that involved the real level of power. That kind of blade energy It was of a higher level than the power of chaos. Under such circumstances, if there was blade energy swallowing and spitting out, it would be of great help to Qin Shujian. Not to mention anything else. Just being tempered by the real power could speed up the comprehension of the real power, which was incomparably important. At this moment, the God-Slayer swallowed and spat out blade energy without stopping, and at the same time, a voice came out from it. Emperor of Heaven, why don't we directly attack and destroy all the players? There's no need for that. Qin Shujian shook his head. If we have the tendency to destroy all the players now, then the heavenly Tao of several player worlds will forcefully awaken and then drive the real power to invade. Currently, in the boundless world, there are not many people who have grasped the real power. On the contrary, if the players have grasped too much real power, then each player will be equivalent to a Tao fruit expert in the virtual world. When that time comes, who will be able to stop them? A Tao fruit. Qin Shujian was confident that he could destroy them. 2 or 3 Tao fruits were still bearable. But if there were 10, 100, 1,000, or even 10,000 Tao fruits, what would they use to fight? However, based on the current situation of the players' worlds, the heavenly Tao did not have the spare energy to inject all of its true power into the universe. However, just because he didn't have the energy to spare didn't mean that he couldn't do it. If it really came to the point where they had to cut off all means of retreat, those heavenly Tao would be able to do it even if they had to sacrifice everything. As such, Qin Shujian did not intend to attack the players now. He was waiting. Wait for an opportunity. Only when many of the experts of the 10,000 races had grasped their true strength would they truly begin their counterattack. But before that, there was no need to force the heavenly axiom of the player worlds into a corner. He had gone overboard. It would only backfire. Judging from the current progress of the fusion, as long as one's talent was normal, they would be able to wield some real power in 3 to 5 years. Furthermore, if it was someone as gifted as Xiao Qingfeng, he would be able to grasp the true power even faster. Hearing this sentence, God-Slayer also understood what Qin Shujian meant. Immediately, he said again, "The Emperor of Heaven does need me to take action." The players now have a portion of their true power. Even if the human race has the 9 tribulations Zhu Bing, they may not be able to resist. Don't worry, the human race is not as weak as you think. Qin Shujian smiled faintly. Baiyun Marquis Mansion. After Xiao Qingfeng awakened his innate wisdom and the Xiao family was taken away, this place was abandoned. At the same time, there was also a new Baiyun Marquis taking over the Baiyun Mansion. But the difference was, no one had moved into the original Baiyun Marquis Mansion. This was also an order from Emperor Zhao. Returning to the familiar place of the past, Xiao Qingfeng's eyes were a little emotional. I haven't been back for a long time. I didn't expect the former Baiyun Marquis Mansion to still be here, just a little more dust. Hearing this, Wu Ming did not speak. He understood Xiao Qingfeng's feelings for the Baiyun Marquis Mansion. In fact, the other party had been the Baiyun Marquis for so many years. It would be a lie to say that he had no feelings and worries. It was just that after the innate wisdom awakened, the memory of immortal Hao Tsong took the upper hand, which led to the other party directly leaving the Baiyun Mansion and taking the Xiao family with him. Is this where the immortal Hao Tsong used to live? There was a curious look in the sky-breaking halberd's eyes. He did not know much about Xiao Qingfeng's past. The only thing he knew was when he was still Hao Tsong in his previous life. Yes. This is the former Baiyun Marquis Mansion. The Xiao family has been in charge of the Baiyun Mansion for thousands of years. We have been resisting foreign enemies for the human race. I am the current Baiyun Marquis of the Xiao family. Xiao Qingfeng smiled faintly. Then he looked in a certain direction. No, the current Baiyun Marquis is no longer the Xiao family's, but the Baiyun Marquis Mansion is still here. After saying this, Xiao Qingfeng waved his hand. Suddenly, the immortal core power seemed to turn into countless breezes that swept through the huge Baiyun Marquis Mansion. All the dust, even the densest dust in the corner, was swept away by the breeze. The dust condensed. In the end, it turned into a fist-sized gray ball. Xiao Qingfeng looked at the ball in front of him and flicked his finger. The ball flew away and disappeared in an instant. When he looked at the Baiyun Marquis mansion again, it was already spotless. I am here to congratulate you on your return, war god. A hearty voice sounded. When Xiao Qingfeng tilted his head to look, he saw a person stepping through the air and landing in front of him in the next moment. Greetings, General. He cupped his hands slightly. The person who came was Dan Hao. If he was still the Baiyun Marquis, Dan Hao's status would be higher than his. But now, he was no longer a subject of the great Zhao dynasty, but the war god of the heavenly court. Their identities had nothing to do with each other. Dan Hao smiled comfortingly. It is the honor of the people of the Baiyun mansion that the war god can return to the Baiyun Marquis mansions. General Dan, have you been waiting here? Not really, but His Majesty said that you were going to return to the Baiyun mansion, so he asked me to come and welcome you, in case someone offends the Marquis. Dan Hao laughed heartily.
To be honest,
he was really happy about Xiao Qingfeng's return. In the past, when the Xiao family was in charge of the Baiyun mansion, the people of the Baiyun mansion could be said to be living in peace, and there were almost no major problems. Of course, there were no major problems in the Baiyun mansion now, but that was because the imperial court was at its peak. It had nothing to do with the current Baiyun Marquis. Chapter 1120. Baiyun Marquis Manor. In a small pavilion, the two sat opposite each other. Xiao Qingfeng waved his hand, and a tea tray appeared. He brewed 2 cups of spirit tea. A cup of spirit tea landed in front of Dan Hao. He picked up his own cup and took a sip. He was a little emotional. It's really different here compared to the heavenly court. Baiyun Manor is the home of the war god. The feeling of returning home is naturally different. Dan Hao smiled. Returning home. Hearing this, Xiao Qingfeng smiled knowingly. Indeed, this word was very appropriate. He was not Immortal Lord Haozong. Immortal Lord Haozong had already died in ancient times. He was only the reincarnation of Immortal Lord Haozong. His current identity was Xiao Qingfeng of the human race. The Xiao family had existed in Baiyun Manor for thousands of years. He had also been the Marquis of Baiyun for many years. In Baiyun Manor, Xiao Qingfeng had some feelings that he could not let go of. Dan Hao put down his teacup, and his expression suddenly became serious. The war god has returned. His Majesty once said that if the war god is willing, Baiyun Manor will still belong to the Xiao family, and the war god will still be the Marquis of Baiyun. If the war god takes over the position of Marquis of Baiyun again, he can disobey orders and not be under the jurisdiction of the imperial court. Disobey orders. Disobey orders. Not be under the jurisdiction of the imperial court. Dan Hao's words were equivalent to saying that Baiyun Manor was officially separated from the Great Zhao and was considered a different imperial court. It had to be said. In order to rope in Xiao Qingfeng, the Great Zhao had indeed made a great decision. Separating a manor. Not everyone had the courage to do so. Xiao Qingfeng was silent for a while. Finally, he shook his head. Let's not talk about the Marquis of Baiyun. Since there is a new Marquis of Baiyun, I have no intention of fighting for the position. The current Baiyun Manor is actually the original residence of the Xiao family. I'll just stay here, and I won't interfere too much in other matters. Of course, if Baiyun Manor is in danger, I won't sit by and do nothing if it's within my power. Marquis of Baiyun was already in the past. His current identity was the Eastern War God of the Heavenly Court. Now that he had returned, Xiao Qingfeng had no intention of fighting for the position. In fact, if he wanted to become the Marquis of Baiyun, he could do so anytime. However, there was no need for that. These words also extinguished Dan Hao's thoughts of continuing to persuade him. What he said earlier, he did not think about the chances of success. After all, Xiao Qingfeng was no longer the Xiao Qingfeng of the past. He was now a top expert among the thousands of races and the leader of the 4 war gods of the heavenly court. It was hard to say if he would accept the position of Marquis Baiyun. If it was him, Dan Hao had a feeling that if he obtained the Eastern War God's deity throne, he might also resign from his current position. I'm relieved to hear that, War God. However, I have to remind you that Baiyun Prefecture has not been peaceful recently. Some players have started to destroy sects and clans. I'm worried that the consequences will spread even further. Player, Xiao Qingfeng furrowed his brows, but soon relaxed. Don't worry, General Shan. I know what to do. Alright, I'm just reminding you. After all, if the Xiao family is implicated by players, I hope that War God can be mentally prepared.
Speaking of this,
Dan Hao stood up from his seat. Alright, I've completed my mission this time. I have other things to do, so I won't disturb War God any longer. When you and I are free in the future, we'll have a good gathering. Take care, General Shan. Xiao Qingfeng nodded. Hearing this, Dan Hao laughed heartily again, and his figure disappeared on the spot. Just as he was about to leave, another person suddenly appeared in his original position. It seems that I've come at the right time. Qin Shujian looked at the tea that was still warm and smiled faintly.
seeing the person who came,
Xiao Qingfeng bowed. Greetings, Emperor of Heaven. Have a seat. Qin Shujian signaled with his eyes. Xiao Qingfeng sat down in front of him. I came to find you, because of the players. I didn't expect De Zhao to be one step ahead and let Dan Hao wait for you here. Speaking of this, Qin Shujian shook his head and laughed. Zhao Emperor was really good at calculating everything clearly. He expected Xiao Qingfeng to come back to Baiyun Mansion. After he got the news about the players, he immediately asked Dan how to come over. Xiao Qingfeng's expression did not change. Now that the players are in chaos, Emperor of Heaven, do you have anything to say? Now that the real power is constantly fusing, the players, as existences in the real world, can already control a trace of real power. This is also why the players are qualified to destroy sects and destroy sections. Real power. Xiao Qingfeng's expression turned solemn. He had also wielded some real power and understood how much real power could suppress illusory power. Qin Shujian said, the players don't control much real power now. At most, they can do whatever they want in the celestial realm. Zubing is a divine weapon that can penetrate real and illusory, so it has some restraints on the players. All of the players killed by the ancestral armaments will die. But, right now, among the thousands of races, there aren't many cultivators who can control real power. This is also why we can't start a war with the players immediately. If we use Zubing to kill the players, it will cause the heavenly axiom of the players' worlds to retaliate. But if we don't do anything, the players will go even crazier. When he said this, Xiao Qingfeng already understood what the other party meant. Immediately, the Eastern God of War said, Emperor of Heaven wants me to do something to intimidate the players. That's right. Qin Shujian nodded in satisfaction. You'll be the one to intimidate those players. Let them understand that the boundless world is not a place for them to wreak havoc. However, the premise of intimidating them is that they can't let too many players die. Moreover, it's not just the players of the human race. The players of other continents are the same. The players did not only exist in the Eastern continent. There were players in the other 3 continents. Even if the human race could alleviate the problem of the players, if the other 3 continents could not, it would still be a problem. Xiao Qingfeng was stunned. The Emperor of Heaven wants me to intimidate the players of the other continents. In the Heavenly Court, there aren't many people who can control real power. To some extent, you're one of the first. If you do something, the players at this stage can't do anything to you. Qin Shujian nodded. A level 7 celestial who had grasped true power was like a nuclear weapon to the current players. Unless more real power surged in, the players would definitely not be able to resist. Immediately, he warned again. But I hope that when the God of War does something, you won't reveal your true power. Just use Zubing as a deterrent. Keep the fact that you have mastered real power as a trump card for now. P.S. On the last day of June, I'm begging for monthly votes. Chapter 11:21. Zubing was intimidating. It was different from completely exposing his true power. If it was the former, Zubing was not a big secret to the players. Similarly, Zubing's appearance would not be a threat to the heavenly axiom of the real world. After all, no matter how strong a divine weapon was, it was only a divine weapon. Not to mention, Zhu Bing's foundation was much weaker in front of the heavenly axiom. Even the 9 tribulations Zhu Bing was only comparable to a Dao fruit-level existence. A divine weapon of this level would not cause the heavenly axiom to be wary. The only thing that could cause the heavenly axiom to be wary was a transformed immortal divine weapon. The last time the God Slayer transformed, it caused the heavenly axiom of the real world to be wary and then gradually awaken from its slumber. In this way, if it was exposed that there were creatures in the vast thousand worlds that were gradually mastering true power, it would definitely attract the attention of the heavenly axiom of the real world. At that time, it was possible that there would be big trouble. This point, Qin Shujian was very clear in his heart. He believed that Xiao Qingfeng should also understand. I understand what the Emperor of Heaven means. Xiao Qingfeng thought for a moment and finally nodded. Not exposing his true power foundation, not wantonly slaughtering players, but mainly to intimidate. Speaking of which, it seemed a little difficult, but in fact it was not impossible. With these words from the God of War, I am relieved. Qin Shujian nodded in satisfaction, then got up and left. As he got up, he actually disappeared from where he was. The Emperor of Heaven's methods are getting more and more superb. Xiao Qingfeng sighed with emotion. He had already ascended to the 7th level immortal, and his strength was almost at the top in the heavenly court. As long as the reborn people of the ancient eras and the incarnations of the sun and moon laws were not counted. Of course, that was before he comprehended true power. After comprehending true power now, Xiao Qingfeng was even confident that he could wrestle with a half-step Dao fruit expert. The premise was that half-step Dao fruit expert did not touch the true level. But even so, when Qin Shujian left, he didn't notice anything. Such a gap. It was a little too big. His line of sight fell on Qin Shujian's original seat. Xiao Qingfeng sighed again. If I'm not wrong, the Emperor of Heaven has also mastered real power.
Think about it.
It wasn't impossible. After all, the other party was an expert from the ancient era and had a deep understanding of the true world. If he hadn't grasped it, how could his strength be so tyrannical? Qianyuan's sacred ground. On an unknown mountaintop, Qin Shujian suddenly appeared. There was a formation in front of him. Time formation. The Tiandi bell, which was the eye of the formation, seemed to have sensed something. It shook a few times, and a pleasant bell chime sounded. In the meantime, Zhang Ergu, who was inside the array, seemed to have sensed something and suddenly opened his eyes. A terrifying aura was emitted from his body, but it quickly disappeared. Emperor of Heaven. Looking at the person in front of him, Zhang Ergu got up and bowed. The current him. There were some changes in his words and actions. Although there was nothing on the surface, there was always an aura of vicissitudes accompanying him. Qin Shujian nodded. It seems that you've gained a lot in the array. How far has your inner world evolved? It advanced to the middle world not long ago. Zhang Ergu smiled. Staying in the time formation for hundreds of thousands of years felt like a day. He had almost forgotten many things. Until now, when he saw Qin Shujian again, he suddenly came back to his senses. Compared to life in the inner world, the vast thousand worlds gave Zhang Ergu a sense of familiarity and intimacy. After all, in the inner world, he was the high and mighty creator. In his eyes, all living beings that were born were always lacking something. However, the creatures in the vast thousand worlds were completely different. The vast thousand worlds. Qin Shujian had a satisfied look on his face. Not bad. After hundreds of thousands of years in the time formation, you can advance to the vast thousand worlds. In terms of strength, you are comparable to an upper third level true immortal. This time, I asked you to come out of seclusion because I have something to tell you. Emperor of Heaven, please speak clearly. Zhang Ergu lowered his head. He knew that Qin Shujian would not disturb him if it was not necessary. After all, although hundreds of thousands of years had passed in the inner world, only a few years had passed in the outside world. The time formation. It could last for 100 years. 100 years in the outside world was 8 million years in the inner world. It had such a long time. Zhang Erge was confident that he could elevate his inner world to the level of the Great Thousand Realms.
Then,
Qin Shujian told him everything about the player's world. After that, Zhang Erge stood there in a daze for a long time. There was no other way. The news that Qin Shujian gave him was too shocking. Even he could not bear it. Thinking, hesitating. In the end, it turned into relief. It turns out that we are just illusions. But the Emperor of Heaven is right. There has never been a clear distinction between reality and illusion. I am me. Whether it is reality or illusion, there will be no change. Zhang Erge said with a smile. If it was before entering the inner world, he might have been lost for a long time. However, after hundreds of thousands of years in the inner world, he could see many things clearly. As a result, it was not so difficult to understand reality and illusion. To put it bluntly, it was the difference in strength. It was like the creatures in the inner world could be destroyed with a wave of his hand. Zhang Erge's understanding of the two was only the relationship between strong and weak. Qin Shujian said, "It's best that you can understand. I asked you to come out of seclusion because even if you advance to the greater thousand world in the time formation and join the ranks of the Tao fruit, it will be useless. The real power has gradually merged with the greater thousand world and even the universe. What you need to do now is to use the opportunity of integration to comprehend the real power." At this point, he paused for a moment. In fact, as early as the beginning, you already had a trace of real power, but that trace of real power was very weak. It was so weak that it was just a little more than negligible. What you need to do now is to expand that extremely weak trace of real power and finally evolve it into a power that you can control. I have real power?
Zhang Erge was really stunned this time.
He couldn't remember when he had comprehended true strength. Qin Shujian smiled faintly. He stretched out his hand, and a red lotus suddenly condensed in his palm. The red lotus spun in his palm, and a mysterious wave lingered in it. The red lotus of purgation. Chapter 11:22. The red lotus of purgation. Zhang Erge blurted out. He didn't forget this technique. In fact, even at his current level, he still hadn't been able to comprehend much of the mysteries of the red lotus of purgation. Regarding this technique, Zhang Erge also felt heartfelt admiration. Could it be that the true power that the Emperor of Heaven mentioned is the red lotus of purgation? His expression changed slightly. Qin Shujian nodded, allowing the red lotus of purgation to float in his palm. That's right. Back then, I faced death and life and entered the real world. In the end, I used the power of the real world to comprehend a divine ability. And this divine ability is called the red lotus of purgation. It's just that I later evolved it into a part of the Guyuan ancestral canon. But in fact, the red lotus of purgation has always been an independent existence. He put away the red lotus of purgation. Qin Shujian said, "Back then, I taught you the red lotus of purgation. If you succeed in cultivating it, you can be considered to have grasped a part of the true power. So it's easier for you to grasp the true power than others. With your current strength, if you grasp enough of the true power, it won't be a problem for you to fight against a Tao fruit. It's even possible for you to kill an ordinary Tao fruit. This is because the true power has a great restraining effect on the illusory power." I understand. Zhang Erge nodded. If he could grasp the true power, then there was no need for him to waste so much time on developing his inner world. After he completely grasped the true power, he could develop his inner world. After all, his strength would be even more powerful. Qin Shujian said, "But I hope that you won't expose too much for the time being. At the same time, pass on my words to all those who have grasped the red lotus of purgation. Let them take this opportunity to comprehend the true power. But there's a prerequisite, that is, without my order, no one is allowed to use the red lotus of purgation without authorization, nor is anyone allowed to reveal the true power. Otherwise, you will be severely punished." Emperor of Heaven, May I ask why? Zhang Erge was stunned. He was not allowed to reveal his true strength. Do not use the Red Lotus of Purgation. Could it be that there was some kind of restriction or misgivings? Qin Shujian didn't answer too much. He just said, there are some things that you don't need to ask so much. Just do as I say. When the time is right, I will let you kill to your heart's content. Yes. Zhang Erge didn't dare to ask any more questions. When he lifted his head, Qin Shujian's figure had already disappeared from the spot. Beside his ear, however, a sentence was transmitted. Now that the players are acting presumptuously in the Eastern Continent, the Qianyuan sacred ground, as the sacred ground of the human race, can't let the players be too presumptuous. I have already left a magic weapon in the Qianyuan sacred ground. You go and get that magic weapon, and then maintain the dignity of the Qianyuan sacred ground. Leaving the Qianyuan sacred ground, Qin Shujian went to the Great Zhao Empire again to meet with Emperor Zhao. Then he went to several other continents to meet with the emperors of the various clans. There were some things. Although he had said it in the court meeting, he still needed to remind them. After all, the sudden attack of the players had caused the situation to somewhat collapse. At this time, he absolutely couldn't let the players ruin his preparations. Therefore, he still needed to remind them. In half a month, Qin Shujian visited all the clans in the world. Finally, he returned to the heavenly court and silently comprehended the true power. The Eastern Continent. In a destroyed sect, in the main hall that was not destroyed yet, many team leaders of the players gathered here. A young man said in a deep voice, I believe that everyone has noticed something. For some reason, the strength of the NPCs in this game has been greatly weakened. A player at the first level of the Celestial Realm can easily kill a boss at the 10th level of the Celestial Realm. At present, in the Eastern Continent, the Qianyuan Sacred Ground has the most complete set of martial arts techniques. As long as we join forces to attack the Qianyuan Sacred Ground, not only will we get the Celestial Realm martial arts techniques, but we will also get the true Immortal Realm techniques. Hearing this, the rest of the people present also nodded to themselves. Then, another person shook his head. The Qianyuan Sacred Ground is not comparable to others. Apart from the Great Zhao Empire, the Qianyuan Sacred Ground is the most powerful human force in the Eastern Continent. Moreover, the Sacred Ground is backed by the Heavenly Court. The Emperor of Heaven is the founder of the Qianyuan Sacred Ground. If we really attack the Qianyuan Sacred Ground, do you think the Emperor of Heaven will just stand by and watch? The Emperor of Heaven. Many people seem to think of the unpleasant past, and their faces darkened. Lu Qinghong said, the Emperor of Heaven is a problem. Back then, tens of millions of players besieged the Qianyuan Sacred Ground, but they were all repelled by him. But one thing to know is that things are different now. No matter how strong the Emperor of Heaven is, he may not be able to compete with all the players. Moreover, players in the first tier of the Celestial Realm can kill NPCs in the 10th tier of the Celestial Realm, but it doesn't mean that this is our limit. It's just that we haven't fought against true immortals yet. If we fight against true immortals, what if we can crush true immortals like we crush other NPCs? As soon as these words came out, many people's eyes flickered.
Yes.
The strongest NPCs killed by players were only in the 10th tier of the Celestial Realm. They had never fought against true immortals. What if? If they could really crush true immortals, then this game would really be the world of the players.
Think about it.
A player in the first tier of the Celestial Realm could crush true immortals. What about 10,000, 100,000, or even 1,000,000? If there were really 1,000,000 players, even if each player could only deal with the weakest true immortals, then if 1,000,000 players joined forces, they would be able to overturn the entire Heavenly Court. How many true immortals were there in the game now? Taking everything into account, whether there were more than 1,000 true immortals was still a question. If 1,000,000 players could kill the weakest true immortals, even the Emperor of Heaven would probably be overwhelmed. At the thought of this, the breathing of many players quickened. Compared to the Qianyuan Sacred Ground, the Heavenly Court was the greatest treasure. If they could really take down the Heavenly Court, the resources obtained might be able to allow them and others to directly advance to true immortals. If that was the case, they would reach the sky in a single bound. After Lu Qinghong finished speaking, a player suddenly looked excited.
Brother Lu is right.
Why don't we find a true immortal to try? If we can really kill a true immortal, we might really be able to try to attack the Heavenly Court. The Heavenly Court rules over thousands of races, and the resources it controls are unimaginable. Even if we can get a little bit of it, everyone here might directly become an immortal. That's right. Right now, we can consider finding a true immortal to test the waters. Many players nodded in agreement, and the scene became intense. Chapter 11:23. In the crowd. Fu Moyan didn't say anything. He silently watched the scene in front of him. At the same time, he was talking to the Emperor of Heaven's incarnation in his sea of consciousness. Senior, is what they said true? He asked the question in his heart. If that was the case, then what was the point of pursuing what he had been pursuing before? Originally, in Fu Moyan's heart, the experts in the boundless world were all very powerful existences. Just like the Emperor of Heaven, he could use methods to make his avatar leave the game. However, if Qin Shujian was really overthrown by the players, then it meant that the so-called Emperor of Heaven was actually not that powerful. If the other party was not strong enough, then the things that could give him were not as much as he imagined. As if he did not notice the fluctuations in Fu Moyan's heart, the Emperor of Heaven's incarnation's tone was still calm. Do you think what they said is true or false? He was asked in return. Fu Moyan's expression did not change. Senior's methods are heaven-defying. I naturally believe in Senior. Since you believe it, then there's nothing to say. It won't be long before you understand whether your choice is right or wrong. The Emperor of Heaven's incarnation said indifferently, and then fell silent. Fu Moyan tried to shout a few times, but he did not get an answer. He also extinguished the idea of continuing the conversation. In the depths of his sea of consciousness, the Emperor of Heaven's incarnation had an indifferent expression. He could see that Fu Moyan's heart was wavering. However, the Emperor of Heaven's incarnation had no intention of waking him up. There was no need to say so much about some things. However, the main reason was that Fu Moyan's role was not as big as before. Over the years, the other party had already killed many children of destiny in the real world. As a result, the fate of heaven and earth had weakened a lot. The fate of heaven and earth had weakened. The power of the way of the heavens had also fallen accordingly. Now that the way of the heavens had awakened from its deep sleep, it was impossible for it to kill the children of destiny as unscrupulously as before. In this way, as a result, Fu Moyan's usefulness was greatly reduced. If the other party didn't know what was good for them and wanted to betray them at the critical moment, then the Emperor of Heaven's avatar would destroy them immediately. However, if Fu Moyan still maintained his original intentions, then as the incarnation of the Emperor of Heaven, he would keep his promise and give him what he wanted. As for the specific results, to put it bluntly, it all depended on Fu Moyan. Inside the main hall, the discussion among the players was still very intense. The more they spoke, the more agitated they became. It was as if they wanted to rush to the Heavenly Court right now, drag the Emperor of Heaven down from the throne, and then take the throne themselves. Fortunately, there were still some who remained clear-headed. Everyone calmed down. It's still too early to talk about overthrowing the Heavenly Court. We can destroy the Qianyuan sacred ground first and test the Heavenly Court's reaction. Then we can plan our next step. If we underestimate the strength of the Heavenly Court and cause the entire army to be wiped out, that would be awkward. As if a bucket of cold water had been poured over them, the players finally came to their senses. That's right. What was being discussed now was just conjecture. He didn't have any concrete evidence to back it up. He was just getting high on his own, just in case their conjecture was wrong. If all the players attacked the Heavenly Court and then were all wiped out by the Emperor of Heaven, causing the collective players' realm to drop, that would be awkward. Those players who dropped their realm would definitely resent them. Just like last time. Some players organized a group of people to attack the Qianyuan sacred ground. The attack later failed. The leader fell from the altar and became the target of everyone. Now, he had completely disappeared without a trace. It could be said that it was a tragic sight. After calming down, someone nodded in agreement. Yes, let's destroy the Qianyuan's sacred ground first. If we can't even destroy the Qianyuan's sacred ground, then everything else is nonsense. As far as I know, the Qianyuan sacred ground now has no more than 10 true immortals, and most of them are new true immortals. The stronger ones are probably the sacred master of the Qianyuan sacred ground and the 2 deputy sacred masters. As long as we can stop those true immortals, the rest of us will be enough to destroy the Qianyuan sacred ground. A player said in a deep voice. Earlier, some people had inquired about the Qianyuan sacred ground. They also had an assessment of the strength of the sacred ground. Fu Moyan listened to what they said, and there was a slight fluctuation in his heart, but he didn't show it. At this moment, an aura like the power of the heavens crushed down from the sky. The main hall couldn't bear it and collapsed with a loud bang. The main hall collapsed. The players inside were the first to react. Their tyrannical strength exploded, and the falling bricks and stones were all shattered into fine powder. Who dares to sneak attack us? You're courting death. The players were burning with anger. They were in a meeting, but they were inexplicably attacked. Although they didn't suffer any serious injuries, they were still very unhappy. He's up there. It was unknown who shouted, but everyone raised their heads to look at the sky, just in time to see a person floating in the air. Xiao Chengfeng. Marquis Beiyun, Xiao Chengfeng. No. He is now the Eastern War God of the Heavenly Court. After seeing the person in the void, many players recognized the other party's identity, and their expressions immediately changed. Xiao Chengfeng. This name had a great deterrent effect on the players of the Eastern continent. Not to mention, he was also known as the Eastern War God of the Heavenly Court. Suddenly, there was a commotion. But soon, someone shouted, "Everyone, don't panic. The strength of all the NPCs is decreasing. Even if it is the Eastern War God, there is nothing to be afraid of. If we can't even deal with the Eastern War God, how can we destroy the Heavenly Court?"
Kill him.
Kill him. In the void. Xiao Chengfeng looked down at the players below. After hearing the words of those players, his expression was indifferent. Destroy the Heavenly Court. What a joke. After a while, he raised his hand, and a terrifying force was brewing in it. A cold and indifferent voice fell from the void and entered the ears of all the players. You have disrupted the order of the human race and destroyed the human race's sections. This is a capital offense. I am here on the orders of the Emperor of Heaven to punish you. After saying that, his palms suddenly fell. Crack! The endless void collapsed as countless red bolts of lightning flickered in the destroyed void. In an instant, the world fell into a state where the sun and moon did not shine. The aura of destruction made all the players tremble. They wanted to resist, but in the face of this force, their bodies could not move at all. In the end, they could only watch the palm fall. At that moment, the mountains collapsed, and the sky fell, and the earth cracked. Everything had been buried. Chapter 11:24. Somewhere. Light flickered. Fu Moyan reappeared there, but he was still in a daze. He had yet to recover from what had just happened. A palm that could destroy heaven and earth. The thousands of players present did not have any power to resist. They were all annihilated by that attack. He thought back to the palm strike just now. He couldn't stop his mind from trembling. Powerful. Ridiculously powerful. His arrogance, which had been inflated by the fact that he had grasped a portion of true power, disappeared completely under that palm. Attacking the Heavenly Court? Crushing a perfected immortal? That was a joke. The Heavenly Court did not even send out an army. They only sent a perfected immortal to wipe out all the players present with a single palm. One had to know. There were not many players present at that time. But in terms of strength, they could be considered as the top players in the Eastern continent. Even so, they did not have any power to resist Xiao Chengfeng.
Crushing.
It was a merciless suppression. That palm. It completely destroyed the thought that had just arisen in Fu Moyan's mind. It turned out, the players were still ants in front of the heavenly court. The so-called boss that they had just killed was also an ant in the eyes of the heavenly court. After killing the ants tried to provoke the true god. What was that if not a joke? He looked at his interface. The realm above had already successfully fallen.
Seeing this,
Fu Moyan could not help but smile bitterly. I haven't fallen in a long time. I didn't expect to fail miserably this time. Senior, is that the true strength of the Eastern God of War? True strength? The Emperor of Heaven's clone sneered. If the Eastern God of War of the Heavenly Court only has such strength, he does not deserve to be called the Eastern God of War. In other words, Xiao Qingfeng's means were far more than that. Fu Moyan's heart skipped a beat. The Emperor of Heaven's clone said, "Don't think that the players can really do whatever they want in the vast thousand domains. In fact, there are many ways to kill the players. If Xiao Qingfeng had used Zubing just now, I would not have been able to save you. Because Zubing's power can really erase the traces of a person's existence, regardless of whether you are a player or a creature of the vast thousand domains." One sentence. Fu Moyan's face turned pale immediately. It was his first time. He felt that he was so close to death. In the meantime, he was also incomparably glad. They were thankful that Xiao Qingfeng did not think much of them. He just casually struck out a palm and killed all of them. If he were to truly use his ancestral armament, he would be killed without knowing why. Thank you for clearing my doubts, Senior. After a long while, Fu Moyan sighed deeply. Too weak. They were still too weak. The war god of the East Pole, Xiao Qingfeng, was already so powerful. Then, as the Emperor of Heaven, who ruled over all the gods in the heavenly court, how powerful would he be? There was no need to think. He could also understand. It was probably impossible for the players to overthrow the heavenly court. Only by hugging the heavenly court's thighs tightly would he be able to obtain enough benefits in the following matters. Annihilating all players with a single palm strike. To Xiao Qingfeng, it was just a simple trick. If he did not get the news in advance that there was someone who could be considered to be on the heavenly court side, then the attack just now would not be as simple as a palm strike. Sky-breaking halberd. Nameless stone spear. They were all Zhu Bing, who could really kill the players. Qin Shujian only said that he could not kill a large number of players, but he did not say that he could not kill any players. If he used Zhu Bing, none of the players present would survive. Immortal. Where are we going now? In the Sea of Consciousness, Sky-breaking halberd asked. Xiao Qingfeng said lightly, "Just now I only killed one player. There are many other places. Since we have already attacked, we might as well kill all of them. I believe that they will be more obedient." Every time a player died, they would drop by one realm, even if those players would not really die. But he believed that dropping by one realm would be enough to make the other party suffer. Especially now, after the realm increased. The time needed for a realm was often a few years, or even more than 10 years to successfully break through. If one died once, the price was not ordinary. Hearing that, Sky-breaking halberd did not say anything else. In the void, Xiao Qingfeng was walking in the air. Suddenly, he paused and looked at the scene below. There was a large number of players gathered there, and in front of all the players stood a person. He saw it clearly. That person was none other than Fang Xinglan. Qianyuan's sacred ground is also going to attack. After seeing Fang Xinglan's appearance, Xiao Qingfeng muttered to himself. He had no intention of attacking. With the number of players below, they were not qualified to threaten Fang Xinglan. No matter what, Fang Xinglan was also an array ancestor. The ancestor of arrays among all the clans in the world. In terms of strength and means, ordinary true immortals could not compare. Moreover, formations were the most effective when used in a group attack. To a certain extent, Fang Xinglan was equivalent to several, or even more than 10 true immortals, especially in that kind of crushing battle. When an array was set up, the lethality was even more terrifying.
So,
Xiao Qingfeng just glanced at it casually and continued to go to other places. Since Qianyuan's sacred ground could solve it by themselves, there was no need for him to do it.
Below.
Feng Xinglan stood with his hands behind his back. In front of him, there was a large number of players gathered. Suddenly, he looked. It was as if there were mountains and plains everywhere, and there was no end in sight. Facing so many players, Feng Xinglan did not show the slightest fear. He looked ahead and said in an indifferent voice, "I will give you one more chance. If you retreat now, there is still room to maneuver. Otherwise, only death awaits you." The number of players in front of him was definitely more than 100,000. But even so, Feng Xinglan still did not take the other party seriously. What he said now was just a formality, because he had already concluded that the players would never retreat easily. After all, with so many players gathered here, it would be a bit ridiculous if they were scared away by a few words from him. Sure enough, after Feng Xinglan finished speaking, a player sneered, as expected of the deputy sacred lord of Qianyuan's sacred ground. "Do you really think that things are still the same as before? Today, not only can you not stop us, but even Qianyuan's sacred ground can't stop us."
Kill. Kill. Kill.
The shouts of killing resounded through the sky, shaking the world. The players gathered here were determined to kill the Qianyuan sacred ground. Seeing this, Feng Xinglan nodded. "Very well, this is your choice. Then don't blame me." After saying this, a small bell appeared in his palm. The next moment, the melodious and heavy sound of the bell swept through the world. Chapter 11:25. The sound of the bell swept through heaven and earth. Along with the sound of the bell, a large array had already been formed. Heaven and earth changed. Heaven and earth reversed. All the players were covered by the array. Outside the array, Feng Xinglan stepped into the air, and the Tiandi bell in his hand landed at the position of the array eye, causing the power of the array to skyrocket. "I gave you a chance, but you don't know how to cherish it. Since that's the case, then I'll let you have a look at my array skills." The ethereal voice, like a devil's voice, fell into the ears of all the players in the array. Just when those players were in shock and doubt, Feng Xinglan flipped his palm. In an instant, heaven and earth turned upside down. Inside the array, the mountains collapsed, and the sea drowned everything. At this moment, all the players seemed to have lost their magical powers. They could only be like ordinary people, unable to resist the natural disaster.
Ah.
Why can't I use my vital essence? Run. Damn it. Some of the players cursed out loud, while others panicked. But it was useless. In front of the natural disaster, ordinary people without any cultivation were like ants, unable to resist at all. Even though the current players all had a little bit of real power in their bodies. However, the Tiandi bell was the one suppressing the array eye. Although this treasure was not the real Zubing, its power was much stronger than the ordinary Zubing. In terms of power, it was not something that the current players could compete with. Even if it was a little bit of real power, it could still be suppressed. This was also the reason why, after falling into the array, all the players' power would be imprisoned.
Destroy.
Feng Xinglan spat out a word, and the Tiandi bell vibrated twice again. At that moment, heaven and earth reversed, and the sky and earth turned upside down. All the players were buried there. Immediately after, the array was broken. The Tiandi bell left the position of the array eye and returned to Feng Xinglan's hand. When he looked in front, everything was still as usual, but those players had disappeared. "Thank you for your help." Feng Xinglan looked at Tiandi bell and smiled. If not for the help of the Tiandi bell, he might not have been able to wipe out those players so easily. Hearing this, the Tiandi bell vibrated gently, and a voice came from it. "Array ancestor, you are too polite. Since the Emperor of Heaven asked me to help the Qianyuan sacred ground, I will do my best." As the most precious treasure of the Emperor of Heaven, he was not arrogant in the slightest. Tiandi bell knew this very well. The Emperor of Heaven valued the Qianyuan sacred ground very much. At this moment, as long as Seller Xinglan was good, it wouldn't be a bad thing for him. Not to mention, the other party was the array ancestor of the heavenly court. In terms of god position, it wasn't low at all. Feng Xinglan said, "This time, with your help, we've wiped out a large number of players. I'm sure they'll be much quieter before they have absolute confidence. Otherwise, if they continue killing like this every day, it'll be troublesome." The most troublesome thing was that the players couldn't be wiped out no matter how hard they tried. If they didn't deter the players at once, there would be endless trouble in the future. Tiandi Bell said, "Every time a player dies, they will lose a realm. The number of players killed by the array just now is hundreds of thousands, if not a million. It's enough to make the Qianyuan's sacred ground famous. Although the players won't die, their strength will be damaged. If they aren't confident, they won't act recklessly." It was no secret that the players would lose a realm after dying. All the immortals of the heavenly court, as well as the senior members of the myriad clans, knew this very well. Know yourself and know your enemy. Only then can you win every battle. If you don't even know the depth of the players, how can you deal with them? After the Qianyuan sacred ground sent Feng Xinglan to kill hundreds of thousands of players, the Great Zhao also made a big move. Speaking of the number of powerhouses, the Great Zhao had always been the top existence among the human race. Even the Qianyuan sacred ground couldn't compare with the Great Zhao in terms of the number of powerhouses. There was no other way. The Qianyuan sacred ground had only been established for a few decades. It had already been thousands of years since the Great Zhao had existed. Although it hadn't broken through 10,000 years, it wasn't far off. In thousands of years, the Great Zhao had cultivated countless powerhouses. Especially after the rise in spirit qi, the powerhouses of the Great Zhao had sprung up like bamboo shoots after the rain. Until now, the number of true immortals was the highest among the myriad clans.
So,
when the Qianyuan sacred ground killed the players, the imperial court also sent powerhouses to strangle any players who caused trouble in various places. In the face of a true immortal powerhouse, that trace of weak and almost undetectable true power was simply impossible to resist. A large number of players were suppressed by the Great Zhao. For a time, as many as tens of millions of players died. With so many people losing a realm, the remaining players of the Eastern continent were immediately deterred. After all, the power that the human race had now displayed was completely crushing. If the other party could easily kill tens of millions of players, then they could kill hundreds of millions or even more. In this case, no matter how many players there were, it was still not enough. As a result, the players of the Eastern continent stopped their attacks. Indeed, there were great benefits to destroying a sect. However, those benefits were insignificant when compared to his own drop in cultivation level and the fact that he was wanted by the Demon Emperor. Because of the Great Zhao's wanted list, some players even dropped not just one realm, but several realms. The further back, it took more time to increase a realm. Several realms. That was in the real world. It took a few years to increase a realm. With such a deterrent, the players of the Eastern continent were much more obedient.
or,
They simply didn't make a move in the Eastern continent. Instead, they targeted the other continents. After all, among the myriad clans, only the Eastern continent was under the control of the human race. As for the other three continents, there were thousands of races. Each race had more or less friction with each other. In that way, the players would have more room to maneuver. We don't have to think about the Eastern continent for the time being. We can only start from the other continents, but the players of those great worlds are also troublesome. After his rebirth, Lu Qinghong's expression was a little ugly when he spoke. Around him, however, were the players in his own team. It was ridiculous to say it. Last time, all the players gathered to discuss attacking the Qianyuan sacred ground and the heavenly court. In the end, they were all killed by a true immortal of the heavenly court.
Since then,
Lu Qinghong extinguished this idea. In addition, the situation in the Eastern continent was grim. In order to gain benefits, they had to change places. Chapter 11:26. Fallen Immortal Domain. Ever since the fallen immortal domain became the entrance to the underworld, the fallen immortal domain had changed its name to the reincarnation domain. What was reincarnation? To the 10,000 races in the world, many people felt unfamiliar. For this, Goddess Pingxin did not explain too much. And under the fallen immortal domain, she used her great magic to open up a foreign space and turned it into an existence of the underworld. In the current underworld, it attracted the true spirits of all the living beings in the world. For a moment, the ghost she here was so dense that it was difficult for living beings to get close. In order to accommodate more true spirits, Goddess Pingxin even expanded the territory of the underworld. In Fengdu City, one by one, ghost messengers were patrolling the underworld. The so-called ghost messengers. In fact, they were cultivators who had entered Fengdu City at the beginning but were unwilling to leave. For this, Goddess Pingxin turned all of them into ghost messengers. After becoming ghost messengers, they could get rid of the original lifespan restriction. As long as the underworld was not destroyed, ghost messengers would not die of old age. After the news spread, those who became ghost messengers were ecstatic. After all, lifespan. For cultivators, it was a gap that was difficult to cross. No matter how powerful an existence was, as long as they had not broken through to the Dao fruit realm, they would always be bound by their lifespan. As strong as a true immortal, it was only a mere 129,600 years. However, after becoming ghost messengers, their lifespan directly became long. As long as the underworld was not destroyed. Not to mention 129,600 years. Even if it was 10 or 100, there would be no problem. To get rid of the lifespan restriction. Even if there were no additional benefits, it would still make others scramble for it. Not to mention, after becoming ghost messengers, their vital essence would be transformed into yin qi, and they could use the yin qi in the underworld to cultivate. It was much faster than cultivating in the upper-class world. Therefore, after these cultivators became ghost messengers, they were all willing to stay here, in the deepest part of the underworld. That was the place where all the true spirits were the most concentrated. After being nourished by the yin qi, some of those true spirits could temporarily develop some spiritual intelligence. However, it was not so easy to awaken the memories of when they had not fallen. Looking at the wandering true spirits in front of her, Goddess Pingxin's expression was calm. She stretched out her hand, and the surrounding yin qi was instantly stirred. Some true spirits flew over uncontrollably, but they quickly left. Once the true spirit is tainted with yin qi, it can truly transform into a soul. Although it can't be compared to a true reincarnation cycle, if the soul gains sentience and embarks on the path of cultivation again, it can barely be considered a new life. Lady Pingxin retracted her hand. When she expanded her divine sense, the entire underworld was within her divine sense.
Samsara.
It was a world's greatest reliance. There was no reincarnation in the false world, so this world had always been flawed. The first era was like this. It was the same now. However, after entering the real world, Goddess Pingxin found another way to suppress reincarnation. That is, ghost cultivators. The cycle of reincarnation and cultivation caused the world to have a perfect order. It also allowed the missing precepts of heaven and earth to be perfected. However, in the absence of reincarnation, a true spirit that could cause a living being to fall and be reborn in the underworld could be considered a disguised reincarnation. Goddess Pingxin could clearly feel it. After the emergence of the underworld, the rules of the Great Thousand World were further perfected. At this moment, there was a slight fluctuation in the yin qi. A green-robed man appeared out of thin air and landed in front of her. The Qin Emperor is here. Looking at the person who came, Goddess Pingxin had a faint smile on her face. She could tell. The Qin Shu Jian in front of her was not the other party's main body, but only a power incarnation. But even so, even from this avatar he could feel some threat. It could be seen from here. How strong was this Emperor of Heaven? Hearing this, Qin Shu Jian smiled and said, Ever since the establishment of the underworld, I have never been here. I have also yearned for Goddess Pingxin for a long time. Goddess Pingxin won't take offense to my sudden arrival today, right? Emperor of Heaven. You must be joking. Goddess Pingxin smiled. At that moment, the huge underworld seemed to be filled with some kind of vitality. The Emperor of Heaven is the Lord of the Great Thousand World, and the underworld is also under the jurisdiction of the Heavenly Court. If the Emperor of Heaven is here, how can I blame him? That's right. Qin Shujian nodded. He deserved the title of the Lord of Heaven and Earth.
Seeing this,
Goddess Pingxin also sighed. Speaking of which, among the generations of heavenly courts for several eras, the Qin Emperor's strength should be the strongest. Even in the demon race's heavenly court of the first era, the Emperor of Heaven, compared to you, is much weaker. Qin Shujian knew that the person she was talking about was the demon Emperor Dijun of the first era. Among all the Emperor of Heaven, the most powerful one. However, this strength was before he had appeared. As for Dijun, Qin Shujian had only heard of it and had never seen it with his own eyes. However, since the other party had already died, it could only mean that he was just a failure.
Then
he turned his gaze towards the vast netherworld, and there were some fluctuations in his gaze. The underworld now contains the true spirit of all the fallen living beings in the world. The combination of Inqi can allow the true spirit to give birth to spiritual wisdom and become a ghost cultivator. In the long run, the underworld will definitely become the second heavenly court. Goddess Pingxin has such a great achievement. It's admirable. Qin Shujian retracted his gaze and looked at the other party. His words were calm, but they were also filled with true admiration. According to the current trend, it was completely possible for the underworld to become the second heavenly court.
it was just that it would take a long time.
But no matter what, the underworld had this foundation. After all, there were simply too many living beings dying in the great wide world every moment. The true spirits of these living beings would eventually fall into the underworld and become a part of the underworld. However, at this point, Qin Shujian changed the topic. If the underworld continues to gather the true spirits of heaven and earth, by then, the power of heaven and earth will definitely become less and less. At that time, such a huge world will officially fall apart. Goddess Pingxin, have you considered this matter? The true spirit of heaven and earth was like a part of the power of heaven and earth. The underworld's continuous absorption of the true spirit was equivalent to continuously plundering the power of heaven and earth. As time passed, as more and more power of heaven and earth was plundered, it would naturally fall into a state of collapse. Goddess Pingxin's expression did not change. I naturally understand what the Qin Emperor said. However, the true spirit exists in heaven and earth. Even if it does not return to the underworld, it will eventually dissipate and not be absorbed by heaven and earth. The only way to solve this problem is the appearance of true reincarnation. Whether the underworld exists or not, it won't change much. Chapter 11:27. In the depths of the underworld, Qin Shujian was having a conversation with Goddess Pingxin. Before the true reincarnation appears, the existence of the underworld can only perfect the laws of heaven and earth a little more. At the same time, it can delay the destruction of heaven and earth, but it can't change anything. Otherwise, the first era wouldn't have been destroyed. Goddess Pingxin's expression was calm. The existence of the underworld can only perfect a part of the loopholes of heaven and earth, but it can't really make heaven and earth get rid of the illusion and evolve into a real existence. Hearing that, Qin Shujian said, illusion will eventually be destroyed, and reality won't last forever. What we are pursuing is a longer future. After a pause, he looked at the huge underworld. Goddess Pingxin should have noticed it too. Now that reality is merging with illusion, the entire heaven and earth and the universe's level of life is transforming bit by bit. Although they won't wait until the moment we succeed in the transformation. But if we take advantage of this time to steal a part of the true power, Can we really create reincarnation? Goddess Pingxin was silent for a while. In the end, she shook her head slightly. I'm not sure. Although the key to reincarnation is reality, it's still a question whether we can create a true reincarnation with the current true power.
I'll do my best.
At least when the war starts, I'll give you some help. That's enough. After getting the answer, Qin Shujian nodded with satisfaction. He didn't want much. It was just a definite answer from Goddess Pingxin. Now there was an answer. Then there was nothing to say. Immediately, he changed the topic, and a smile appeared on his originally serious face. Goddess Pingxin is a mighty figure of the First Era. You have a deep understanding of the heavenly Tao. Why don't the two of us have a discussion? Sure. In the underworld, energy surged like clouds, and all the laws of heaven and earth appeared in the sky at this moment. There was a rich Tao aura that turned into gray lotus flowers that fell. All the true spirits in the underworld, as well as the various ghost servants, seemed to have heard a vast and mighty voice. For a moment, they were stunned on the spot. An illusory figure was wandering in the underworld. All of a sudden, that illusory figure seemed to have heard something, and his body stood there in a daze. In the next moment, monstrous energy crazily gathered around him. Energy converged. The illusory figure slowly solidified. Finally, the face of a middle-aged man with a dignified expression appeared. He opened his eyes. A look of confusion flashed across the middle-aged man's eyes. Then, he involuntarily covered his head with his hands. His expression was hideous and painful, as if something was about to explode from his mind.
Ah! Ah!
He hugged his head and roared. The intense pain caused his face to contort with madness. A long time later, the middle-aged man calmed down and slowly lowered his hands that were hugging his head. In the meantime, many memories appeared in his mind. South Wind Mansion, Heavenly Corpse Sect, a top sect, sect leader, celestial beings. For a moment, the middle-aged man's face was blank. Under the impact of the enormous memory, he was unable to recover for a long time. After an unknown period of time, his sluggish expression gradually returned to normal. Immediately after, his face was incomparably ferocious. I am the sect leader of the Heavenly Corpse sect, Lian Gumming. Qin Shujian, you are the one who harmed me. You didn't expect that I would be reborn. When I reach the peak in the future, I will definitely tear you into pieces. His voice was gnashing his teeth. He wanted to kill his way out now and turn Qin Shujian into ashes. However, Lian Gumming could understand. He didn't know how long he had been dead. If Qin Shujian was still alive, his strength must have improved a lot. Although he was reborn now, his strength had not yet recovered to its peak. He wanted to deal with Qin Shujian. He was still a little short. At this time, suddenly, black clouds gathered in the underworld. Immediately after, a thunderbolt struck down. Lian Gumming was caught off guard and was directly hit. In an instant, the originally solid soul body was almost directly scattered when the thunderbolt struck. The sudden thunderbolt struck. Some of the ghosts and ghost envoys in the vicinity were shocked. Why did the thunderbolt suddenly appear in the underworld? Not good. The thunderbolt was the most young, and the ghost envoys were the most and evil. The two could be said to be mutually reinforcing. However, mutually reinforcing and restraining, who depended on which side was stronger. Without a doubt, the thunderbolt was the condensation of the power between heaven and earth. It was not something that ordinary ghosts and ghost envoys could compare to.
So,
the thunderbolt struck down. For the many ghosts and ghost envoys in the underworld, it was a terrible nightmare. If they were struck by the thunderbolt, they would definitely die. Even if they were lucky, they wouldn't die. They would have to be seriously injured. Where Lian Gumming was originally standing, there was a deep pit that was neither big nor small. The thunderbolt dissipated. However, the remaining yang aura still made the ghosts not dare to approach. At the bottom of the pit, Lian Gumming's solid soul body became illusory, as if it would shatter at any time. His face was dull, as if he had not reacted to what had happened. Wise. Why is there a thunderbolt tribulation? The sect master of the Heavenly Corpse sect still couldn't figure out what he had done to incur the wrath of the heavens and earth, to the point where lightning struck him. There must be a reason. Otherwise, there would not be a thunderbolt tribulation for no reason. Lying at the bottom of the pit, Lien Gumming fell into deep thought.
He was thinking about what he had done just now.
Where did he go against the will of the heavens and earth to cause the thunderbolt to strike?
Wait.
Lien Gumming seemed to have thought of something. Could it be that Qin? Just as he said this, a great fear suddenly surged in his heart.
Suddenly,
the words that were about to come out of his mouth were forcefully swallowed back. However, Lien Gumming's face was already replaced by a look of shock. Impossible. How long has it been? How did he grow to this point? Could it be that I have been dead for many years? But even if he had been dead for many years, what level of cultivation did Qin Shujian have to reach in order to be able to do what he was doing now, where he would be struck by lightning just by saying his name? Even if he was a celestial being, there was no such exaggerated method, because after he died, he was only a true spirit. Lien Gumming only wandered unconsciously between heaven and earth. He had no impression of the changes in time and the changes in heaven and earth. Until now. After obtaining the Yin Qi to cast his body in the underworld, he was truly reborn. But after his rebirth, the memories he obtained were only the memories of his previous life. He did not have any memories of his true spirit. Chapter 11:28. In the depths of the underworld. When the two of them sat down to discuss the Tao, various laws and Tao runes turned into a river of stars that flowed around them. Qin Shujian and Goddess Pingxin each had a lotus platform below them. When discussing the Tao, each of them explained their own understanding of the Tao. Although Qin Shujian was only an incarnation in the underworld, but the incarnation in terms of strength was very different from the original body, but in terms of understanding of cultivation it was not inferior at all. In addition, he was now the #1 person in this era, so his understanding of the Tao was even deeper. Every time he said a word, it could cause a huge change in the weather. And it made Goddess Pingxin have a different kind of understanding in her heart. On the other side, Goddess Pingxin was the lord of the underworld and a top expert of the first era. In terms of status, she was not much lower than Tao ancestor Hong Jun.
So,
she also had her own unique understanding of the Tao. When discussing the Tao, although Qin Shujian said the most, Goddess Pingxin occasionally said 1 or 2 sentences, which could make him understand some things. Time passed. Suddenly, the preaching stopped. Qin Shujian looked in a certain direction in the underworld, and his expression became strange. At this moment, Goddess Pingxin also withdrew from the preaching state. As the lord of the underworld, she was very familiar with the changes in the underworld. When the lightning tribulation descended, she could not help but smile. A mere ghost wants to curse the Emperor of Heaven. He was not killed by the lightning tribulation because of the dense Yin energy in the underworld, which weakened the power of the lightning tribulation. If it was in the outside world, that lightning tribulation would have really turned him into ashes. Hearing this, Qin Shujian's expression was calm. He can be considered an old friend of mine. I didn't expect him to be reborn in the underworld. Well, since he can be reborn in the underworld, it can be considered his good fortune. This person's temperament is not bad. He might really have some achievements in the future. Goddess Pingxin nodded. Lien Gumming only cursed Qin Shujian, but after being struck by lightning, he understood the key points. It was indeed a little different. Ordinary Yin spirits would only think that it was a coincidence when they were struck by lightning. For the other party to be able to think so much in some aspects, it could be said that he was unique. Qin Shujian retracted his gaze from Lien Gumming and began to preach again. In the beginning, he was surprised by Lien Gumming's rebirth.
But then he thought about it.
There were countless true spirits gathered in the underworld, so it was only natural that there would be some acquaintances among them. Liao Gumming was already a celestial being before his death. Heavenly man major cultivation. The true spirit itself was extremely tenacious and would not be destroyed so easily. It had only been a few decades since the other party's fall. Several decades later, it was not enough to destroy the true spirit of an Empyrean. It would take hundreds or thousands of years for the true spirit of a celestial to be completely obliterated. As such, the rebirth of Liao Gumming. It was an accident, but it was also reasonable. If it was in the past, the first thing Qin Shujian would do when an enemy was reborn was to eliminate them to prevent future troubles. However, the current him did not have such thoughts. It was not that he would not eliminate the root of the problem like before. It was purely because Liao Gumming was no longer worthy of him eliminating the root of the problem. After his rebirth, Liao Gumming was only a spirit of the god martial realm. Taking a step back, even if the other party was a spirit of the Empyrean realm, in front of the Emperor of Heaven it was like an ant that could be destroyed with a thought. Such a threat. For Qin Shujian it was not a threat at all. To cut the grass, he had to eliminate the root. It had to be that the grass could cut his skin. If it could not even cut a hair, then why would he care about such a grass? If he killed the other party, it would make him seem a little cheap. Moreover, if Liao Gumming scolded him a few more times, he would not even need to personally make a move. The lightning tribulation would send him on his way. Now that Liao Gumming did not scold him, the lightning tribulation in front of him could be considered a lesson. From this matter it could be seen. After the establishment of the underworld, Qin Shujian felt that those enemies who had died in his hands in the past would most likely be reborn here. If they were unlucky and their true spirit was destroyed in advance, then there was nothing he could do. But as long as their true spirit was not destroyed, at this time, they would be able to be reborn. Especially when he discussed the Tao with Goddess Pingxin, it could be considered as giving the underworld a good fortune. Then, the spirits and ghost messengers here could increase their strength to a certain extent. As Qin Shujian preached again, Goddess Pingxin also retracted her gaze from Liao Gumming. A spirit of the god martial realm was not worth her attention. What she said about some achievements was that there was hope for him to become a true immortal in the future. However, to the Lord of the Underworld, there was no difference between having a true immortal and not having one. Even a 9th-level immortal was like an ant. Moreover, Goddess Pingxin did not think that Liao Gumming had the chance to reach that step. The preaching continued. Tao runes filled the underworld for all the spirits and ghost messengers to absorb. Inside the deep pit, Liao Gumming, who was about to dissipate, could not help but absorb the surrounding yin qi to heal his injuries after hearing the preaching. Gradually, he forgot where he was. The yin qi was attracted and swept over like a gust of wind, gradually wrapping around Liao Gumming's body.
Soon,
a cocoon formed from yin qi appeared in the deep pit. The yang qi that originally existed in the deep pit, under the impact of the yin qi, disappeared into nothingness.
Boom.
The ghost messenger's aura soared, and his face revealed a look of ecstasy. I've succeeded in breaking through. This time, he heard it. It allowed him to successfully break through his original boundary and break through to a new realm. At this moment, the token at his waist vibrated. The ghost messenger woke up from a state of ecstasy and read the message in the token. The phenomenon of the underworld has appeared, and the strength of many spirits has increased greatly. For this reason, the spirits are causing trouble. Capture all the spirits causing trouble and maintain the order of the underworld. There must be no mistakes. The spirits were causing trouble. A cold killing intent appeared in the ghost messenger's eyes.
Just right.
Now that his strength had broken through, he could use those spirits to practice his moves and verify his own methods. On the other side, inside the deep pit, the yin qi cocoon stayed there quietly. After an unknown period of time, all of a sudden, the yin qi cocoon shook violently, as if something was about to come out. In the next breath, boom, the yin qi cocoon exploded, and Liao Gumming escaped from it. A powerful aura erupted from his body, instantly stirring up the yin qi violently. Ha ha ha, I've finally succeeded in breaking through. Now, how many people in the world are my opponents? Chapter 11:29. Excitement.
Excitement.
Unprecedented excitement. Liao Gumming realized that after his rebirth, his breakthrough was actually faster than before. In a short period of time, not only did he break through the threshold of the God martial arts realm, but he also directly broke through to the celestial being realm. He also broke the original shackles. He directly advanced to the third level of the celestial being realm. He was only one step away from the legendary fourth level of the celestial being realm. Inside the Great Zhao, the various top sections, the third level of the celestial being realm was considered the top. Those above the fourth level of the celestial being realm were basically powerhouses that only the imperial court could have. I am already at the third level of the celestial being realm. When I return to revive the heavenly corpse sect, who in the world can stop me? Even if it is you, Qin, I will definitely take revenge for this. Liao Gumming laughed wantonly. However, when it came to Qin Shujin's name, he had experience and did not say his full name. In the distance, Zhao Xian was wearing the attire of a ghost. He looked at Liao Gumming, who was laughing at the sky with a strange expression. This Yin soul. Could it be that his brain was damaged? Otherwise, how could a third level of the celestial being realm dare to say such arrogant words? After watching for a long time, Liao Gumming was still laughing wildly. At this moment, Zhao Xian could not help it. He originally came to capture the Yin soul that was causing trouble. The Yin soul in front of him was not a big problem. But, for some reason, when he saw Liao Gumming's crazy appearance, Zhao Xian always felt that the other party might endanger the order of the underworld. So he directly made a decision. Boom! A terrifying aura crushed down from the sky, causing Liao Gumming's laughter to abruptly stop. His body could not help but tremble as if he had encountered a terrifying existence. That aura. It made his mind stagnate. At this moment, Zhao Xian slowly walked over. The soul-restraining chain on his waist had already been untied. He came in front of Liao Gumming and said indifferently, I suspect that you are disturbing the order of the underworld, so now I am officially arresting you. If you dare to resist, kill on the spot. Disturbing the order of the underworld? Looking at the soul-restraining chain on his body, Liao Gumming did not react until now. He did not understand. How did he disturb the underworld? Moreover, what was the underworld? He had never heard of it. However, the aura emanating from Zhao Xian's body made the heavenly corpse sect master feel fear. Too strong. The other party was definitely not just a saint. Perhaps even a powerful being would not have such a terrifying aura. Liao Gumming's mind trembled. He didn't understand. How could Zhao Xian, who looked so ordinary, have such terrifying strength? Liao Gumming only regained his senses when he was bound by the soul-restraining chain and dragged away by his opponent. Let's go. Zhao Xian held one end of the soul-restraining chain in one hand and walked in front as if he was dragging an animal. A sense of humiliation rose in Liao Gumming's heart. However, he also understood that the situation was not in his favor, so he did not resist. Instead, he followed behind Zhao Xian and asked carefully, May I ask, Senior, what is the underworld? He heard the question behind him. Zhao Xian turned to look at Liao Gumming before turning back and said, Hell is a place created by goddess Ping Xian with her great skills. It is used to store the true spirits of all the fallen living beings in this world. You were able to be reborn here because of the existence of the underworld. Without the underworld to store the true spirits, you might have completely dissipated from this world if you continued for a while. Hell. Goddess Ping Xian. Liao Gumming understood some things from the other party's words. Then he asked carefully again, May I ask who Goddess Ping Xian is and how high her cultivation is? Goddess Ping Xian is an ancient powerhouse. I don't know how high her cultivation is. I only know that Goddess Ping Xian is an existence on par with the Emperor of Heaven. Zhao Xian shook his head, his eyes full of respect for Goddess Ping Xian. That kind of powerhouse. It was not something that he could guess. Emperor of Heaven? Liao Gumming was puzzled again. He had never heard of this title before. Could it be that he had really died many years ago? Or else, how could there be so many strange powerhouses in this world? He thought in his heart. Lien Gumming continued to ask, "Who is the Emperor of Heaven?" "The Emperor of Heaven is the Emperor of Heaven. A few decades ago, the Emperor of Heaven rose in the human race. First, he became the human emperor. Later on, he intimidated the myriad races and established the supreme heavenly court. From then on, he was known as the Emperor of Heaven. He was the true top existence in the world. If it weren't for the Emperor of Heaven, when the great calamity of the demon abyss broke out, we wouldn't have been able to survive it so easily." Zhao Xian was a little impatient, but he still said a few more words. In his eyes, to be able to say something to some ghosts who had just awakened their memories and didn't understand the current situation, it was also a form of satisfaction for him. So, Zhao Xian was willing to say so much to Lien Gumming. Human Emperor. Lien Gumming was shocked. He was clear about what the human emperor was. But the myriad races? Hadn't they disappeared for a long time? Only the human race and the demon race were left in this world. How could there be any myriad races? As for the Emperor of Heaven of the heavenly court, that was even more unheard of. Suppressing the shock in his heart, Lien Gumming continued to ask, "I remember that when I died, the human race was ruled by the Great Zhao. The demon race existed in the Endless Mountain Range. Could it be that the demon race in the Endless Mountain Range isn't there anymore? Or is it that even the Great Zhao isn't there anymore? The human race is now the strongest race among the myriad races. The Zhao Emperor is also the Emperor Zhongyuan of the heavenly court. His strength is very tyrannical. How could the Great Zhao not exist? Even the demon race and the demon race are much weaker than the human race." Zhao Xian glanced at Lien Gumming. Until now, he understood that the other party had been dead for quite some time. Otherwise, he wouldn't say anything about the Endless Mountain Range. Then Zhao Xian explained a lot more. Some of them involved the Great Zhao, some involved the myriad races, and even the heavenly court. From the look of shock on Lien Gumming's face, he felt a great sense of satisfaction. For a time, he had a better impression of this somewhat neurotic celestial Yin soul. Although the other parties seemed to have some intelligence problems, when he learned about the other party's death, Zhao Xian also understood why Lien Gumming was so ignorant. Unfortunately, he wasn't a human. Otherwise, he would have heard of the Heavenly Corpse sect, which he remembered for a while. After Zhao Xian finished speaking, Lien Gumming keenly grasped a crucial point from all this. That was Yuan sect. "You said that the Emperor of Heaven used to be the master of Yuan sect. Later, he became the human emperor, established the Qianyuan sacred ground, and finally ruled the myriad races to become the Emperor of Heaven?" "That's right." Zhao Xian nodded. "Then may I ask what the surname of the Emperor of Heaven is?" "Qin. His surname is Qin." Liao Gumming was completely shocked. Chapter 1130. The surname of the Emperor of Heaven is Qin. There seemed to be no need to say anything more. Lien Gumming didn't expect his old enemy to have grown to this level. Qin Shujian's cultivation base didn't need to be mentioned since he was able to become an existence that ruled over thousands of races. Just by looking at this unfathomable person in front of him and the reverence in his eyes when he talked about the two words, Emperor of Heaven, he could understand many things. Right now, he was only at the third level of the sky-human realm. Compared to the other party, the difference was unimaginable. No, even if I can't take revenge, the inheritance of the Heavenly Corpse sect can't be severed like this. Since I can be reborn, then the others of the Heavenly Corpse sect should also be reborn in the underworld if they are lucky enough. Find them and rebuild the orthodoxy of the Heavenly Corpse sect. Liao Gumming made up his mind. It didn't matter if he couldn't take revenge. In any case, as long as the Heavenly Corpse sect was rebuilt, the fact that Qin Shujian had destroyed the Heavenly Corpse sect would no longer exist. In this way, as such, there was no need to talk about hatred. He comforted himself. For a moment, Lien Gumming's mood eased a lot. His current goal was to find the other members of the Heavenly Corpse sect and rebuild the orthodoxy of the Heavenly Corpse sect. Not to mention anything else. The elders of the Heavenly Corpse sect were all in the god martial realm. Since his true spirit could be reborn in the underworld, then the true spirit of the divine martial realm could also be reborn. Just as he was secretly planning in his heart. Zhao Xian had already pulled him towards Fengdu City. Lian Gumming was deeply shaken as he looked at the towering city. That oppressive feeling. It made him feel like an insignificant ant. Although in reality, he was currently at the 3rd level of the Deva realm. In front of experts, he was no different from an ant. He was shocked. Lian Gumming couldn't help but blurt out, "Senior, may I ask what that place is?" That's Fengdu City, the only city in the entire underworld. There are many experts in Fengdu City. Ghosts like you can be seen everywhere. There are even a few true, immortal experts. Zhao Xian's expression was proud. As an emissary of hell, the stronger hell was, the more respect he would have. Every time he defeated a soul hunter, he would always enjoy the shock he felt from the Yin spirit. Therefore, Zhao Xian gave an appropriate explanation to Lian Gumming's question. Fengdu City. It was a city. The shock in Lian Gumming's heart was indescribable. If Zhao Xian hadn't said it, he would have thought that it was a barrier that separated the underworld. Now it seems. It was clearly a city wall. Even with his own eyesight, Lian Gumming could barely see the end of the wall. There was no other way. The walls of Necropolis were simply too high. Then, Yin energy blocked his vision. Even though diviner cultivators had amazing eyesight, it wasn't easy for them to see through the walls. While speaking, Zhao Xian pulled Lian Gumming into Fengdu City. Seeing this, Lian Gumming asked, "Senior, where do you want to take me?" "Prison." "Senior, I didn't do anything. Why do you want to imprison me?" "I suspect that you have the potential to disrupt the order of the underworld. Let's lock you up in prison for 3 to 5 years first. When the time comes, if you perform well enough, you will be released." Zhao Xian gave an incoherent reply. Lian Gumming was speechless. What did he mean by the potential to disrupt the order of the underworld? He didn't do anything. At most, when he was reborn, he spoke a little arrogantly. Just this. He was going to be locked up for 3 to 5 years? Lian Gumming would never have thought that he would be locked up in prison right after he was reborn. "Senior, I'm innocent." "Shut up. Any ghost will say that they're innocent. How can there be so many innocent people? If you keep shouting, I'll lock you up for 30 to 50 years. Zhao Xian scolded. Hearing this, Lian Gumming immediately shut his mouth. 3 to 5 years was enough. If it was 30 to 50 years, he would go crazy. Fengdu City seemed very close, but it was actually very far. The two of them walked for more than an hour before they arrived in front of a city gate.
Now.
Only then did Lian Gumming truly feel how powerful Fengdu City was. The entire city naturally gave off a sense of oppression, making people involuntarily feel awe. And at the city gate, many ghosts and ghost messengers could be seen entering and exiting. Every ghost that entered and exited had an aura that wasn't weak. Among them, most of the auras were much stronger than his. And some. The pressure was like a prison. At a glance, one could tell that their cultivation was unfathomable. So many experts. Lian Gumming was secretly shocked. He originally had some doubts about Zhao Xian's words. But when he really arrived at the gate of Fengdu City, he finally understood how many experts there were in Fengdu City. He was a cultivator at the 3rd level of the Heaven Realm. He was really nothing. When he really entered Fengdu City, Lian Gumming was shocked again. Compared to the experts entering and leaving the city, the number of experts in Fengdu City was truly shocking. Looking at it, a dense crowd of experts. If it was in his own era, that would be the case. Every expert here was qualified to establish a top sect. Even, they were qualified to compete with the Great Zhao at that time. Or crush the Great Zhao at that time. There were really too many experts. If he had to use a word to describe it, it would be that the Saint Realm Almighties were everywhere, and the transcendent being was inferior to dogs. Lian Gumming felt inferior. The cultivation that he was so proud of turned out to be so humble in the underworld.
He found it hard to imagine.
If the underworld was so powerful, then how powerful would the heavenly court, which ruled the 10,000 races, be? Follow me. Zhao Xian's cold and stern voice sounded, causing Lian Gumming to recover from his shocked state.
Then,
He obediently followed her. Looking at the many cultivators who brushed past him, he could vaguely feel a shocking aura. Lian Gumming was a little worried that there would be experts who didn't like him and would attack him. Fortunately, along the way, this didn't happen. Although there were many experts in Fengdu City, each of them kept order and didn't do anything that violated the rules. If he didn't understand the terrifying cultivation of these cultivators, he would have mistakenly thought. The people he saw here were all reclusive people who stayed away from the disputes. Fengdu City has its rules. In Fengdu City, no one can make a move. Otherwise, there will be experts suppressing them. In addition, you can't be too arrogant because there are too many experts in Fengdu City. Even if you can't make a move in Fengdu City, they have plenty of ways to deal with you outside Fengdu City. Unless you can stay in Fengdu City and not go out, that's another matter. All right, we're here. Zhao Xian suddenly said. Lian Gumming was stunned. Then, he looked forward and didn't move his gaze away. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.